A red sun rises. Blood has been spilt this night, everyone. My name is Bobby Shortle, and I'm here with Nick Rocco Scalia, and we are the Intrepid Filmographers. Every mini-series, we chart a course through the full filmography of an under-discussed genre or journeyman filmmaker. In this expedition, we do our best to try and be explorers, using our years of film knowledge to help guide us, but always being open to discovering new things about the medium we love so much. This week, we continue our special expedition into the films of Peter Jackson and into his epic journey and his opus into The Lord of the Rings with The Two Towers, and find out what's taters, precious. Give me your Gollum impression.
I don't have one.
Come on.
I don't. I definitely don't. Definitely don't have one for public consumption. I will say this. So I think I've mentioned on the show before, my wife is not a fantasy person. She knows we were dating when these movies came out. We've been together a long time, and she's never been interested, and I've never pushed them on her. I thought maybe because we were watching it for the show, not that she's an avid listener of the show, but I thought maybe since I had to watch them again, maybe this would be a good opportunity because they're such good movies, right? Mm-hmm. Like I do think they sort of transcend the fantasy genre. Yeah. But then it came time to watch Fellowship and she wasn't around. It's like, well, I got to watch it. So I did without her. And I started Two Towers, and the other night she came downstairs for just a couple of minutes, and it was that scene that you were just referencing, which I always, literally anytime potatoes come up in the house, I always, because this movie is great and it's memorable, and she was profoundly creeped out by it. Like, I don't think she had ever actually seen Andy Serkis as Gollum before, and like what he looked like, and she didn't know she's walking into this completely blindly and also very disinterestedly, and she's like, oh, is this supposed to be like scary and frightening? I was like, I guess it kind of is. And even though that's like a comedic scene, you've got this like shriveled, mangled corpse thing, like talking like you were just, I'm not going to do it, but you know what I'm saying? And I was like, yeah, that's a dimension of this that I've never really considered before, right? Because I'm so invested in all the other stuff. But like when you do, just sort of walking into these movies completely blindly, yeah, this is a pretty freaky world that Jackson has conjured up here. And there's some other stuff, particularly, and there's I'm hesitant to start this conversation. I've been this whole time, right? Like talking about Fellowship. It's like, how are we going to cover that movie? And then I was like, okay, well, we got through the first one. I think we're on a roll here, and this is going to be easy to talk about. And I have like 1,000 more thoughts about this one than I did about that one. And that one's like my favorite, as we've talked about. Yeah. There's so many angles to hit this from, and that was one that I just hadn't even really thought of before. But yeah, Gollum is pretty fucking freaky. Yeah, he's supposed to be freaky. I think this is a very fascinating one to talk about because I think from a lot of angles, it is the most interesting movie of the three because it does the most different than from the source material of any of the three movies, basically. It diverts in a lot of major ways. So as a book reader, it is very, very different. Fellowship changes a lot of things, right? Frodo's age, timeline stuff, all this stuff, big things from the Fellowship of the Ring. But, A to B to C to D plot wise, it covers pretty much what the first book covers. The Two Towers wildly diverges in a lot of ways, changes some major characters in some very big ways. And both leaves out certain things that are in the Two Towers book and pushes them into the next movie, and also enhances things in the books that are, minor as far as the space they take up as text in the books. It's the middle chapter of a trilogy, which is always, I think the place where you can solidify or stumble, right? Your three movies, because you have to create kind of a beginning and create kind of an end, because especially in The Lord of the Rings, which was originally written as just one giant book that they split up only because in the late 40s or whatever, there was a major paper shortage. So they couldn't print a book that was that long, which is why they split it into three books. Did not know. They're all pretty long books too, right? Yeah. Individually, they're like 300, 400 pages, okay. 400 pages. Shorter than I would have thought. Yeah. But it was like, put them like a 1,200 page book in like 1947 or whatever year it was that it was going to be published. And the publisher was like, no, we cannot do this. It will have to charge like $1 bajillion for it. Nobody will buy it. We're going to split it into three books. And
So Tolkien had to decide like where those three, where those dividing lines would be, and also what to call the three books, because they were originally was the Lord of the Rings, right? So even the name The Two Towers is like this squishy thing, which was like, he was always cagey about like what the Two Towers were. Jackson in this movie obviously kind of like stakes a claim on what the Two Towers means for this movie.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things just in reading sort of the backstory of this, the idea that Tolkien's idea of what the Two Towers are and Jackson's idea of what the Two Towers are two different things, because I've never read the book, so I've always taken the Jackson interpretation, which makes a lot of sense, and I didn't realize anybody thought any different. Like, it's been interesting, and I do think now I have to read them, finally, 30 some odd years after I probably should have. Look at that handsomely bound edition of that.
Yeah.
See, that's what I want to. Like, that's the thing. I can't just take out a shitty, torn up, like, library paper book copy. It's got to be something, it's got to be a tome. It's got to be something I can hold and just really, smell and feel.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful edition of the book. It's not the easiest one to read in the whole world. I'll tell you that right now. So it might be a good idea to have some sort of shitty version to read, But, I will say that, like, back to your point about the Jackson versus Tolkien interpretation, it's not exactly true, because Tolkien said several different things about what the Two Towers would be and what it might mean. He mentioned, Orthanc and Barad-dûr, which is what the movie sort of like solidifies on. Could have been, Minas Morgul, which is where the ring wraiths come out of, where Frodo, Sam, and Gollum kind of climb past in Return of the King, and Minas Tirith, which is obviously the home of Gondor or whatever. There's a lot of towers in the Lord of the Rings, but he solidifies on these two things, which is these two like nasty forces, right? The two kind of evil forces, kind of pincering the good guys, basically.
The two fronts of the war.
This
is a war movie. This one, the first one is a road movie, and this one's a spaghetti western, I think. It's
I wouldn't call it a war movie. I think Return of the King is a war movie.
Well, sure, that is. I mean, this one is.
This has one of the best battles in movie history, but it really is just that last 45 minutes that's really a battle thing, right? The rest of it is kind of.
Well, that's what I was saying, though. I mean,
right?
It's like I definitely got the spaghetti western feel from this, and particularly from the stuff with, not Frodo stuff,
Right, of course.
Because the Frodo story does kind of continue the quest narrative, the road movie thing. The rest of it, the Rohan aside, which it basically is, it's this kind of diversion, this tributary from the main story. Definitely that feels like a Leone movie, like these wanderers and this sort of. Yeah, that's what I love about spaghetti westerns, right? Like they nominally take place in the American West, but like there's no sense of place. Like we're not going from this particular town in this particular state to wherever. It's just like the desert, this town, the West, and Middle Earth is very much like that. These sort of wandering characters who get caught up in this other adventure, this thing that is not, they're just going off to rescue their friends, and then they end up getting caught up in this war. I love that. I think that's This movie was an interesting watch for me, because I've probably seen this one the least of the three. Okay. And I can't say, I mean, you've watched these many, many, many more times than I have. That goes without saying. We've talked about that a little bit already. Does. But I do think like this one is the one I've probably seen the least, and yet I'm watching it, and so many things that I remember as sort of like quintessential images and scenes and moments from this trilogy that I forgot were in this movie are in this movie. Like I thought they were in the previous one or in the next one, but like stuff that I absolutely love more than anything are in this one. And it was very interesting to see that, because my snapshot of this, my sort of like shorthand memory is Gollum and Helm's Deep. And that's it, right? Like everything else is just sort of somewhat related to that. It's the Gollum story, and then it's this battle scene that climaxes the movie that we're talking about. One of my very favorite things in the entire trilogy, the Ents, I thought that was all in Return of the King. And I was like, oh, Treebeard's in this one too. Awesome.
Actually, they're not in Return of the King at all, basically.
Really? Because I remember...
The very beginning, they're in it, but that's it.
The Siege of Isengard, where they, like, wreck the place, which is an amazing scene. I thought that was, like, juxtaposed with the final battle in the entire trilogy.
Oh, no.
It's juxtaposed with the final battle in this movie. So I had a great time watching this,
That's
actually.
Great.
Like, I've always loved. Again, they're all 10 out of 10 movies. I love them all. Always have. Always will. But I forgot how good this one actually is. And you were mentioning the second movie thing, right? And I was thinking about trilogies, and the ones I grew up with and the ones I love. Of course, the original Star Wars trilogy, in which the second movie is the greatest movie. Everybody knows that, right? Like Empire Strikes Back is the greatest movie in that trilogy. The fact that this is as good a movie as Empire Strikes Back, and there's a better one that follows it, which is something that Star Wars definitely can't claim. So
yeah,
I'm going to go out on maybe not a limb and say this is the greatest trilogy ever filmed.
I mean, I would agree with you on that one 100%. I think, we spoke last time about our feelings going into watching Fellowship, right? And for me, it was like, kind of, I went along with some people. I was, I was interested in it, but it was not something that I was like, kind of like, oh my God, I cannot wait to see this. It's whatever. Obviously, Fellowship Ring becomes my favorite movie of all time. I see it 7 times in the movie theater. And we know, right, from the time Fellowship drops, that Two Towers is coming out a year later, right? December 2002, The Two Towers will be out, right? That's like the deal, right? And I remember just this like voracious hunger that me and my friends had for this movie to come out, right?
Sure.
It was,
I think we all
at that
did.
time, the most excited I'd ever been for a movie to come out. And I just remember us constantly talking about like, how is it going to start? How is it going to begin? What are they going to start with? Because again, the books don't have this sort of like, and this is the end of the book, and the next book starts, and it has this big set piece to start the book. It's very much like, nope, like the action continues. Like Frodo and Sam are going this way, and Legolas and Gimli and Aragorn are going this way, and we will pick up with them. And in fact, the books are, Two Towers and Return of the King are split in half. It tells the entire story of Frodo and Sam, the entire story of Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and the Rohan stuff all the way through. And then the second half of the book is all the Sam and Frodo and Gollum stuff all the way through. It's not intercut with each other. It's told totally separately in 2 different things. So again, I'm like, well, what are they going to start with, right? Because I just have no idea. Is it just going to be them running on the plains? Is it going to be Sam and Frodo in whatever?
So you're saying all the juxtaposition in this movie, the fact that, the way we're going back and forth between these 2 things is not that, that's mind-blowing to me.
Not at all. And this is why I say this one especially is such a fascinating work of adaptation from the writers and Jackson as a filmmaker, because they had to do the most to this one to really make it flow and move, right?
Well, it's such a beautifully edited movie, too. I mean, It reminds me very much of, I think the greatest job of editing in those sort of terms, right? Like juxtaposing this part of the story with this part of the story is The Godfather Part 2, another second film, trilogy, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, if you want to call it
that. I don't know if that's an official one, but another, much like Star Wars, right? Where the second movie is better than the first. Although the first is my favorite movie of all time. I fully acknowledge Godfather 2 is better. But I think one of the reasons that it is better is because of the way it does exactly what this movie does. The point where it jumps from this thing to this thing is so perfectly realized in this. I mean, this was nominated for an Oscar for editing. I think it won a few awards for its editing. And the fact that they kind of just did that rather than, had a blueprint from the books to follow is pretty fascinating to me.
Yeah. And this was when I saw this was the first time I was seeing them, one of these movies for the first time, now having read the books, right? I read the books, I think, twice in the year between when the first movie came out and Two Towers came out. So,
Did you sleep back then?
No, not really. I still don't sleep now, Nick, to be totally honest with you, but like...
I don't either, right? And I guess I didn't back then. Yeah, I don't know. There was a lot of Mad Dog being drank back then.
I had a list of, me and my best friend basically would sit there and like a list of things we were waiting to see, right, in the Two Towers, right? How are they going to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, everything. Like, I wonder how they're going to do this. Are they going to change this? Because there's a lot of stuff in Tolkien that, especially when you get past the first book, like the Ents, where you can imagine another world where some filmmaker just goes like, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do the walking, talking tree part. Like, let's just like let's just clean this up, right?
I'm so glad we don't live in that world.
I know, me too. But so we're thinking about this stuff, right? And I remember the first time I saw it midnight, that Tuesday night, because opens on a Wednesday. And I remember the movie ending, and I did not feel disappointed, but I definitely was weighted by my own expectations and my own, like, almost seeing double while watching the movie, right? This is what I call it when you're kind of really intimately know a source material and you see a movie. It's like you're watching it twice, right? You're kind of seeing the movie, but you're also seeing the movie in your head that you had pictured happening, right? And so I saw it and I was like, okay, I really liked that. I did not like it nearly as much as I liked Fellowship of the Ring, right? I saw it the next day again. And that second viewing, it completely opened up my heart to the movie, basically. I was like, okay, no, this is great. Now that I know what the movie is, I'm no longer waiting or thinking it's going to be one way and it's not that way. I'm just taking the movie for what it is. I was like, this is great. Like, all these decisions they made work. We'll get into some of the decisions that are really different from the book. There are some really, really different things that happen here. And these things have been talked about a bajillion times, a bajillion places, but I'll give my take on them as we go through it. But, I loved it when it came out. And it probably is when I've seen second. I probably seen them in like descending order when they came out, just how many times I've seen them, only because if I'm going to watch one of them, I'm going to watch all of them. And the first two just had like, a year, 2 years, and 1 year head start on Return of the King. So Return of the King just can never catch up because I just am always watching the other ones in addition to it, right? So it never really gets there. It never catches up with the other one. So yeah, and I want to talk about Gollum. I want to talk about the technical achievement behind Gollum, because the other thing about this movie, even above Fellowship of the Ring, is it is truly a fulcrum point in the history of special effects filmmaking. Like, it is truly the hinge upon which we go from the 1990s sort of way of doing visual effects and stuff to the point where we get to through the 2000s and the kind of leap in techniques and animation and digital artistry that would happen, right? This is truly that fulcrum point. Gollum is the fulcrum point of those things. So it's really interesting to talk about. I
remember very distinctly Barnes & Noble for years back in the day, because, we used to read paper magazines. That was a thing for a long time. And Cinefex, the special effects magazine, about genre films, there was like a beautiful edition of that. And the cover of it is just Gollum kind of sitting there staring like right into the lens. And it was just this shot, from I think it was from The Two Towers. Because I think it came out before the last film came out. And I remember just seeing that, that being the sort of, the iconic image from this movie. I mean, there's so much going on in this movie, but yeah, you can't talk about this film without talking about, like, this is, and I forgot another thing that I just sort of, I misplaced. Like, I remember so much about this trilogy, and I do consider, I'm not the fan that you are.
It's okay. Nobody should be the level of fan that I am. I'm too far.
But these movies are that good, right? Like, I do think, if you say, like, these are my 3 favorite movies, like, you're not wrong. Right. I do think they are world class. They're as good as films get. I just never had the time to watch them, I guess, as much as you did. But, like, I do think this film is like getting back to what I was saying.
Yeah.
Like, I remember so many things, but I've misplaced them. I didn't know which film they were in, when they came about, in terms of the chronology and the story. Like, I remember Gollum being in Fellowship a lot, and he's like not. No. We see him like twice. Yeah. Very, very briefly in the introduction. We see him a little bit in the Moria sequence that I love so much. And then he's completely forgotten about because all the other cool stuff that happens in that sequence, like a couple of seconds later. But this is the movie where we really, truly get, this is the one with the face-to-face, the conversation with himself moment. Another thing that kind of freaked my wife out. She literally saw 3 minutes of this movie. It was all Gollum stuff. And she was like, what is this?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's freaky. I mean, Gollum is freaky, but so I guess let's just jump into the movie and we'll sort of go through these big moments as we go. Obviously, we talked a lot about the pre-production and stuff in the last episode, because these movies are shot all together. Obviously, a lot of that talk goes for this as well. There are obviously things we'll talk about technically and pre-production wise in this. I mean, Gollum will be one that we talk about a lot. The Rohan, like sort of sets and everything like that, we'll also speak about for sure when we get there. But the way it starts, we kind of start with going back to Moria, right? We start with this Gandalf scene, and we see what happens after he falls into the pit with the Balrog. I mean, obviously, we start with this like, you know, cheat code. Like, here are just these mountains in New Zealand, and it's like, okay, like. Just immediate, you know, production value. There's no effects happening. It's just beautiful snow-covered mountains, you know, and, you know, much like we talked about Jackson all over the place, you know, and we didn't even talk about this last time either. He constantly wants to move the camera. He constantly wants to do things that people have not done with the type of effects and stuff that are going on, right? Constantly asking a lot out of his creative partners to get these shots done. So we go to the mountains, then we go into the mountain, you know, into the mountain in one continuous shot to where Gandalf is standing on the bridge. And we kind of see it from a different angle than we've seen it from before, right? You know, and one thing we didn't even talk about in the last episode was this sort of forced perspective idea. We talked about it a little bit, but the idea that Jackson wanted to do something that had never been done before, which he wanted to move the camera in forced perspective shots, right? So not only do they have to build, they had to have them sitting, you know, in different positions, they had to have like a rig that would move the actor who was the bigger actor on a little tiny table in front of a big, huge table, and then like sort of all, you know, and sort of move the camera and the table at the same time, it would, you know, regain the thing. He just does not want to settle for what has already been done, and you can see it already here, right? We get a, you know, crazy sequence to start this thing off, which is like the first, you know, it's the first like minute and a half of the movie or a minute of the movie. One
of my favorite images in the entire trilogy is the battle between Gandalf and the Balrog, and they're sort of descending, you know, it's this descent into hell that we saw a little bit of, you know, we kind of saw the start of it in the previous movie, and now it continues and continues and continues. And we get this incredible wide shot where they are descending into this like underground ocean. And it starts because the Balrog is on fire. You see it gradually start to light up from above. It is, I mean, it's a painting. It's absolutely beautiful. It lasts just a couple of seconds. It's one of the most incredible shots I've ever seen. And this movie's like, yeah, we have 3 hours and 40 minutes or something to go from here. So
yeah, and
they're coming out of the gate pretty strong, I would say.
I have that in my notes as that shot every single time. You know, it's one of those things where it's like, so much thought and design went into this shot that you said, you know, like you said, lasts 3 seconds, and then it's gone and we never see it again. It's just like you said, a stunning shot. You know, we didn't mention last time either, a big part of their art department, they brought on Alan Lee and John Howe, who, if you've seen any illustrated version of Lord of the Rings in the last like 50 years, they did all those illustrations. So they were the ones who sort of like defined what that stuff looked like in the first place, and then they were brought over to kind of design things like this, right, for, you know, for the movies. You know, we get part of this battle, and then we snap into, you know, Frodo and Sam, you know, in this on the way to Moria. On the way to Mordor.
A dream sequence. It's sort of presented in a way that it looks like Frodo's just kind of imagining it. It's a vision he's having or something like that. Yeah, I mean, we do, like, it kind of picks up right where the last one left off.
It does.
Except for, you know, this incredible opening, which just, it sets the tone so perfectly. And then we're talking about the drop of the Fellowship of the Ring title in the last one. This can't compete with that, right? It's just got the Two Towers and we're moving on, you know?
Yeah. So I would say, like, once again, in this movie, just like in Fellowship, the title card is in a different place than it was in the theatrical version. Theatrical version of Fellowship, it's not in like the Hobbit hole. It's when it's that shot of Frodo sitting against the tree, you know, waiting for Gandalf. It comes up there and I think both of the title cards in the extended and theatrical and Fellowship are great, are perfect in their own ways. In this, I do definitely think the Two Towers card is better in the theatrical version, because it's that moment when they walk over the hill and they see Mordor like in the distance.
Oh,
like,
wow.
That's where the Two Towers.
Yeah, this one is like, just kind of a shot, landscape shot, and here's the title, and we're done. We're moving on.
It's when they're going down down the rope, which is not in the theatrical version of the movie.
It's a great scene.
It's a great scene. It's a great little personality scene. You know what I mean?
I feel like I remember seeing that in the theater. I guess
it's not in the theater. No. it's one of those little detail things. So the Elvish rope, it really is one of those things where he's doing it for the fans in a lot of ways, because big thing with the Elvish rope is like the salt, but also the Elvish rope that comes undone when you pull it. Like that was Elvish rope is magic. He for the most part stays away from labeling things magical or not magical. He kind of lets them be sort of like esoteric in their power levels, because I think to make it, like you said way in the beginning of this episode, these movies more palatable and more universal than just people who really like fantasy stuff, right?
The D&D players, the people who've read Tolkien and, whoever else, right?
Yeah. So they don't want to be like, he's got a magic rope that the knots come undone and, whatever. They don't have to say that. They just kind of give you that thing. But very quickly we're given Gollum, right? Like we are seeing, first of all, how hard this journey is for them, right? They're getting lost. They don't know where they're going. They're obviously in a lot of trouble. But once again, we're still bringing it down to the character stuff. Like Sam is being Sam, Frodo is being Frodo, but very quickly we are into the Gollum stuff, right? And we get this first, which I think again it's an iconic image of Gollum climbing down that rock face, right at him, and the hobbits being ready for him, right? And I think this is the first time we're seeing him, so it's a good time to talk about sort of, I guess, our overall thoughts on Gollum, and we'll talk a little bit about the technical stuff as well. I think a lot of very iconic fantasy sci-fi characters, Gollum has taken on a life of his own, obviously, after this is over. And I think to a lot of people, I think even you, like before we did Fellowship, you were like, yeah, the other two movies are a little too Gollum heavy, for me. And I think like that's a picture a lot of people have of the movies. Gollum is in this movie for 30 minutes, like total screen time, probably, maybe a little bit more, but he became such an iconic character. The voice became very iconic. It got parodied a bajillion times, right? It just became a very enduring thing from this movie. So I think people think of it as like a character that it kind of overwhelms these movies, which I don't think is the case, but
that's
I'm
exactly
curious.
What I thought before getting into this. Yeah, I mean, like I said, my snapshot of this movie is Gollum and then Helm's Deep, and literally that's all I remember. Like there is a lot more, just so many things that I forgot were in this film, and just the bog that we'll have to talk about in a little bit. But yeah,
the dead marshes, yes, they are.
God, so good. Yeah, I mean, like that road movie, quest narrative, adventure stuff that I love in the first movie, there is a lot of that in this, right? Like I didn't remember kind of how far Sam and Frodo get, and they're part of the journey, they're part of the story in this movie. There is a lot of that. I mean, that's basically half of this movie.
Yes, absolutely. How do you feel about the performance, though, the Gollum performance, which is something I think we should talk about, like the Andy Serkis?
It's incredible. I mean, literally. I mean, we've seen so many fully CGI characters and motion captured characters since this came out, that are kind of doing something similar to this. And I mean, you can
many of them driven by Andy Serkis.
Of course. Yeah. He's an industry unto himself. I will say the first time I saw this, and seeing it now, almost 25 years after it came out, and 25 years after they did it, right? I mean, this was all kind of made in 99, 2000, 2001. It is so believable, and he's integrated so perfectly, and the performance is so good, the physicality of it, the voice, again, it is. The problem with something that gets this popular, the problem with something that is this iconic and this well-known is you shorthand it, right? You're always thinking, it's my precious. That's not good. I told you.
It was okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
But like, there's so much more to it than that, right? And because this is the movie where you get to see the more human side of him, the Smeagol side of Gollum, and he is endearing in parts of this. He is disgusting in parts of this. It's such a multifaceted character and a multifaceted performance, and I believe every bit of it. He is. Some of the other characters in this, I feel like kind of get short shrift, right? Like Gimli is kind of comic relief mostly in this movie.
Yeah.
Legolas is kind of, just handsome and around and shoots some arrows. And
I mean, honestly, handsome and around is sort of Legolas's whole deal the whole time. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought I remembered more depth. I think they're all just so likable that we just, we ascribed things to them that maybe aren't in the movies. But like Gollum / Smeagol is so many things at so many different times and is believable in all of them. It's not just there. Like very little of that character, very little of that performance is just there to like make you laugh, make you scared. Like it's not shock moments. It's really character driven, I feel like, and every aspect of the personality and just the interactions. I mean, I forgot how good they were, how, and that, is another thing that I think is very interesting about this, right? Like when Andy Serkis was on set, they were just going to, kind of paint him in on these scenes. They shot without him and then they shot with him. And when he was on set with the actors, the other actors, Elijah Wood and Sean Astin, they gave better performances when he was there. And I think that makes a lot of sense, right? David Wenham, who has a couple scenes with him late in the film. It feels like a fully realized performance in so many ways. And it looks spectacular.
It does. It really does.
It's such a good special effect. He looks so real. Everything about, it's the lighting, the color, the way CGI now, as we've talked about on the show before, these special effects houses have so little time to really integrate it, to really give it weight, to make it look like it's part of the scene and, match it with the movements and the lighting. Because you can just, After Effects will automatically do that for you, right? Like you can motion track stuff in a couple of clicks. And now I feel like a lot of special effects are just that. Like, we hit it, we let it render, and we're good. This feels like every frame is exactly what it needs to be. And so, in all of these, when they're tossing him around these like fight scenes with this completely unreal character, you can feel it, it definitely is not just sort of an asylum special effect. And yeah, I really enjoyed the Gollum stuff and I was kind of not looking forward to it because again, I felt like I felt like it was kind of tired at this, like everything about this. Can I make a depressing point before we go any further?
Yeah, sure.
I remember seeing this movie and all of these when they came out and thinking, this is so great. And like, things are going to get better from here, right? Like this is a starting point and the industry, like we're going to get big, epic, thoughtful, smart, expensive, lavish movies. And they're just going to keep getting better. That has not happened at all.
I think right now we're in the last couple of years have been a real down period, right? I think there have been bright spots right here and there are still filmmakers who are able to leverage their power to make big, thoughtful blockbusters and epics, but the problem is there was a whole run of time where who the director was, whatever was really de-emphasized, right? And so you got more into this.
You got a lot of Clash of the Titans type movies.
Well, yeah. I mean, to be fair, I want to say this. I don't want to talk about other eras with rose-colored glasses. If you go back and look at the box office and years of movies from when we thought movies were great, there was a ton of crap that came out.
Sure, there was.
And we talked about this around the time when our first episode when we were doing the Tron Legacy episode, which is like we were going over like what came out that year, and I was like, oh my god, like you can definitely see why it was so easy, seemingly, for Marvel to come in and be like, look, we can guarantee you it'll be at least a 7 every time. And Hollywood was like, thank God.
And for a long time they were, yeah.
And so they were, and they would spike up, higher than that. And then, but it was always like, a good chain restaurant level of food, of movie, no matter what. But I think, the reason you were able to have something like Gollum is because you have somebody like Peter Jackson who is like, no, this is not going to be wrong. This is going to be right. It has to be right.
Yeah, we're not cutting a single corner. We're going to make everything work. And we're like, this movie, again.
And you also have a studio, by the way, in Lumenline who's like writing everything on this movie. So it's like, no, it has to work. So take him, do everything you can do to make it work.
But also, keeping him not on a short leash, right? Like, he says something and they're like, all right, we trust you. And it's like that. Maybe that's what it is too, right? Like it's a director with a very singular vision, with a great idea for what this is. Like, look, I'll say it right now. I like King Kong. I remember seeing that thinking that's going to be as good as the Lord of the Rings movies. It's not.
No.
I sort of like the Hobbit movies. They're not even close. They're
they are not.
many steps below this.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that feeling that I had was that, this is a starting point. This is what audiences want, right? A movie that has the emotional weight of like a Godfather Part 2 with these epic battle sequences, with these incredible special effects. I mean, this movie is everything you could possibly want, unless you're my wife. Aside from her, it's everything anyone could possibly want out of a movie. And this is only the second movie in a trilogy. The next one's real good too.
It's true. Yeah, and I think for me, Circus is amazing. I think part of the thing with Gollum and sort of like like you said, like the kind of the short noting, the sort of like, shorthanding of Gollum being sort of everywhere and overtaking the movie and all this stuff is also because I really like in Andy Serkis, especially in this era, to sort of like the Anthony Daniels as C-3PO sort of like actor who became like all about being Gollum for a period of time.
Yeah.
And I think he was very out there. He's very theatrical. He's very like, he doesn't act like, oh, I'm a cool like movie star guy. Like he was like, I'll do the impression in an interview, And so like, I think that also, added to that feeling.
Well, it's a very quirky character, and I think the quirks are the thing that are very easy to remember and a very easy thing to like parody and to sort of integrate into everything. But like it's so much more nuanced than that and so much more interesting. And I think that's really what struck me this time seeing it was just how much there is to this character, to the interactions with the other characters, and like there are themes. What is so great about this trilogy is it's not just your standard sort of good and evil story. There are like real interesting shadings and philosophical ideas. There's a monologue that I forgot was in this movie.
Are you talking about the end?
No.
Oh, okay.
That's great too.
Yeah.
It's a bit with Faramir about midway through the movie that like I had to go back and watch 3 times because I was like, this is absolutely brilliant. And I didn't remember this at all. So there's a lot going on here. I mean, I do think, I guess it's just been so long since I've really fully invested myself in these movies that I forgot that they're not just awesome, right? They're not just really fun, enjoyable movies the same way. Like I love the Indiana Jones first 3 movies, and I can watch those anytime. I love Jaws. I can watch that anytime. This kind of goes beyond that in a lot of ways. This moved me a lot more than I expected it to.
Yeah.
And again, I've always loved it, but I don't know. I thought it was going to not go down in stature for me, but like I didn't expect to get as wrapped up in it as I did. And I think, the circus performance is a huge part of that. And all of these things, all of these shadings with this character, the way he kind of goes back and forth between these 2 sides of his personality, sometimes, moment to moment, word to word, that stuff is fascinating. And the way Frodo behaves with him and behaves toward him, that's such a big part of this movie. And this movie is confident enough to slow down to give you that instead of just, action, movement. We're going to this place. We're fighting this battle. We're solving this problem. And I just really love that about it.
Yeah, I absolutely. And I think, I mentioned before about the technological like fulcrum thing. And this just goes to Jackson and all his contributors and all of the, the people at What a Workshop and What a Digital and all this stuff. But
they had 260 people and they doubled their staff to make not the trilogy, to make this movie, like in the process of making the 2 towers.
Yeah.
And you can see why, right? Like, as you said, there's in every frame that they've put together here, you can tell there's a lot of thought and intentionality and work. Just the render times, like, you're a video editor. I've done a lot of that too. And, when something takes like 2 minutes now, it's like, hurry up.
Yeah.
And like when you're talking like hours and hours and hours per frame, it's like, wow. That's crazy. What an incredible thing.
And they basically, the Bob Shea at New Line was like, you can do a lot of the effects, but you're not doing Gollum. You guys are not ready to do it. And Peter Jackson would just not let it happen. Like he was like, no, we're going to prove to them that we can do this and we're going to do it. Speaking of this like vision that he has and has always had, bigger than a lot of other filmmakers, right? About, he's not just a director. He's a writer as well, obviously. He's a producer, but he's also an effects person. He also has a much bigger brain for this stuff than a lot of other directors have and a lot of other filmmakers have. And they fought to get this, they fought to get it. They did it. And, they basically created a lot of technology and pipelines for effects like this that would be used for years and years and years and developed into tools that the industry would use all over the place. But, this is a character that's a mix of motion capture, which is basically, circus with dots on a suit doing motion, plus, bespoke animation. The face is totally hand animated, right? There was no facial performance capture at that time, right? That was not a thing that existed for movies in this way. So they would look at circus's performance and like mold it to look like it, but at times, but they had to do it all by hand. So it's a huge technical achievement, as well. And also the fact that the way they shot it, I mentioned circus being on set. This had never done, no one had never done this before. They'd never been like, we're going to have a person sort of like, do a character, and then we're going to put this whole character in to interact with these actors. Like you said, they really just had circus do the passes with the actors just for reference, basically, and just to give the actors an idea of where they were supposed to stand and what they were supposed to do. And if you listen to the actors talk about it, they're like, circus he really fought to like make his performance important to the people on set. And it really wasn't until they were like basically almost done with Two Towers that they realized how important circus was to the whole thing. Like they had been modeling and animating Gollum, and at a certain point, basically Jackson went to them and said, look, we got to change this. That like, you need to make his face look more like Andy Serkis's face. It's got to express in the way he's expressing. And they had been animating for years at this point. So they had to go, it was like this crazy changeover they had to do in order to do it. And at that time they had to like model it. They modeled it like physically to show Jackson. They had all these different busts to show him, and everything, like a crazy thing they had to do, for that. And it's just this testament to the sort of meeting between the technical and the artistic, right? In this way that really came to a great head. And it's, the thing too is they talk about the story about how they were getting shots back from the animators and they were like, this just isn't right. It doesn't look right. And so, and I don't know if this ever happens anymore, or I doubt it does because of like the deadlines and how separated everything is.
Right.
But like the writers, like Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens and Andy Serkis, went to Weta Digital and sat with them in a conference room for hours and just talked through with them who the character of Gollum was, what his story was, because they were like, we just thought he was like kind of like a creepy, like thief. Like that's how we kind of came across, and we were getting like these like performances from Serkis that weren't making sense for what we were supposed to be doing, And he said that really changed like everything about the process.
And what's wild about that is that stuff they got back probably looked good, right?
Yeah.
It probably wasn't bad in terms of, this is a terrible special effect. They are really talented. They know what they're doing there. We've seen it in other films. But it's more, this has to be right for the story. This has to reveal the kind of depth and the humanity of this character. And you can't just make it, a good looking, horror movie villain kind of thing. And yeah. Like you've probably seen it, right? Like, did they ever release any of that footage of the original Gollum?
If you watch the extended edition, like appendices stuff, they have all of this stuff in there, like what he used to look like, and then how they remodeled him to look the way he looks in the final movie. And it's just one of these things that's like, and some of it's still even now where they've done great digital characters. Don't get me wrong, like there are some great ones. And some that technically, obviously, probably look better than Gollum looks, right? As far as like the amount of animations that are going on, the amount of all that stuff that's going on. But there are still moments like when Frodo calls him Smeagol for the first time, and he like looks up and there's like this light that comes into his eyes, and it's like, how do you make me feel that way looking at this completely digital creation right in front of you? You watch like Corridor Crew or whatever talk about these movies, and there's a part where like, when he's talking to himself, when he's doing that scene, he's like, the mouth moves the way a mouth moves. Like it's not just flapping like an open, like it's got like articulation and stuff, and like all that had to be hand animated. There's no shortcuts back then to do anything like that, and even the fact that like they decided at a certain point that because the performances were so much better, when Serkis was in the scene, they were literally roto painting him out of the scenes and putting in the Gollum thing and having to paint back in, elements of the scenery that they had to paint away when they were painting him out of the scenes. He wasn't wearing one of those suits that tracked all his motion and everything like that. Like, it was a painstaking, complicated process. And they did it though, because it was the best result. It was going to be the best result. And that's what they wanted. They wanted it to be the best it possibly could be. And that's what you got, and I think they even mentioned like this technique of like, they had a double scale like statue of him built. That's how they would scan like textures in back then. They couldn't create them, so they had to scan these like actual models. And one of the things they said was like, as the painter, like, how do you get it to look like you can see through his skin? Because this was the big thing before this. Like, translucent skin wasn't a thing before this in CG characters. And so the painter explained to them how he did it, and they kind of like cross-trained each other. They taught him how to paint in the computer, and he taught them about like, oh, this is how you like make it look like there are veins and blood and all this stuff. And that's why it looks so, authentic and real in those scenes. It's just an unbelievable thing. I think it came out in 2002 and probably had to be wrapped in 2001 is just one of these like insane things, And Serkis is great, and he's great in the next movie, and he's great. Look, we'll talk about the Hobbit when we get there. One of the truly great things in those Hobbit movies is the riddles in the dark, like sequence in those Hobbit movies when you see him in those movies. Just really one of those things where it's like, a million little things had to come together to make it work. And if it hadn't worked, and Peter Jackson talks about this, he goes like, if Gollum doesn't work, the movies don't work. The Two Towers and Return of the King just don't work. He's too important to those movies and the vital things that happen in them for him to not work. So it's really kind of astounding.
And it's so easy to think of a filmmaker taking just, you find a very skinny, emaciated, sort of small statured actor, paint him gray and have him go crazy, have him get an actual physical person in those scenes. Yeah. And it could have worked.
Maybe.
It just never would have worked as good as this.
No. Because they talk about there's just things that Gollum can do as a character that a human can't do. Like he's sort of like the climbing down the rocks, the acrobatic stuff, all that kind of stuff. The way he can contort his body. It's just pretty crazy. So anyway, we start there with all this Frodo and Sam stuff. They capture Gollum. Gollum's going to lead them to the Black Gate, right?
Yep. Oh, what a great set that is. So much to talk about.
Yeah, we'll get there. But we do join now with Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli kind of chasing down the Uruk-hai. I guess we see the Uruk-hai first with the hobbits on their backs. Get some there's a lot of iconic lines in this movie that were very memeified. We get our man flesh, what do you smell? Man flesh. Another little nerdy thing that's in this extended edition that's not in the theatrical is the orc drought, like that stuff that they make Merry drink that like wakes him up.
Oh, the brown water? Yeah.
The brown water, which is this special water that like orcs drink so they can run like that, like and basically heal and all that kind of stuff from battle. It kind of keeps them going. I love that was in the extended edition because it's not in the regular one. Getting these great makeup effects. I just love that we can have the camera just sitting like in this mass of people, and they're all in these amazing makeup effects, and the camera's like right up on their face, and
they look
none
fantastic.
of it breaks down. Yeah.
I'm sure he has a name, and I don't know it, but the one that tries to eat them later on kind of looks like the
I don't think he might have a name
from Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah,
what an amazing looking character. Again, I mean, Gollum is far and away the best, but like there's so many of these like smaller characters that are also just these very distinctive sort of looks about them, and that do have this otherworldly, very freaky. I mean, and it is a lot of that is the performance, the way he kind of like looks into the camera a couple times. I mean, there's, as I was saying, a lot of horror in this movie. And like just some of and again, that's why you get a Peter Jackson to do this, right? Like a guy who kind of cut his teeth on stuff like that, and, watching stuff like The Frighteners and Dead Alive, like you kind of see like little bits and pieces of this kind of coming together, and he knows how to like put something on screen that is like very human and very freaky looking, it's not just like silly horror stuff. Like they and it's kind of a comic relief character, actually. He just gets squashed by Treebeard later on. But like in the moment, it's like, wow, like that's scarier than things I've seen in horror movies.
Yeah, the costuming and all this is great. The regular orcs, the Uruk-hai all look great. Like that guy is great. The other guy who gets his head chopped off by the Uruk-hai who tries to eat him is crazy good makeup effects. I love the lighting and stuff in this scene, like that blue lighting that they've got going on. I think it all looks awesome. And I will say too, like the next time we see our three heroes running, I think there's a thing that people don't realize, which is that the reason you see most, fantasy stuff shot in like, very directional lighting, very, stylized theatrical lighting is because these costumes and stuff are very hard to make look like real and feel like they're placed where they are.
Weathered, lived in.
They look like, it's very easy for them to look like Halloween costumes, you know? But that's why it's such a flex that the first time you see the three of them, it is like bright ass daylight when they're running. And there is not a moment where you're like, no, this is not, this same clothes this person has been probably wearing, Aragorn's been wearing for 100 years or whatever, it's like, it just feels all so real and so lived in and fits so well. And I think, like I said, it's very easy to take it for granted in those moments. And it's just, this consistent triumph of the craftspeople and artistic people on these movies that this stuff looks the way it looks, throughout the whole thing.
It's never silly, it's never exaggerated. Everything does feel like it, like you said, it has a place in the world. And we were talking about this with Fellowship also, right? Like this is shot in a sort of, you could see it being a more sedate sort of thing, and you kind of keep it in the wide shots and you hide these things a little bit. There's ways to sort of mask that this is not metal, it's plastic. But no, in this movie, we're actually just going to make it out of metal because it has to look that good, Even just the those pins that the hobbits have, like pinning their cloaks together, and I think it's Merry drops one at one point, and they pick it up later. Like even just these little things, these little props they're perfect looking. They're shiny, they're weighty, they are tangible in a way that, again, I love Star Wars, but there's so much in Star Wars where it's like, well, you can tell that's like a spray painted piece of styrofoam,
Yeah. Yes, the clasp they got from Lothlorien on their cloaks. One of my favorite lines is the "not lightly do the leaves of Lorien fall." That Aragorn says when he picks it up.
I love this. Again, I forgot all about this, right? This spaghetti Western tracking, this chase sequence we have here. It's great.
Yeah. Legolas, what do your L5 see? They're taking the hobbits to Isengard, which is a hugely meme. There was like this, millions upon hundreds of millions, YouTube video that came out like years ago. But then we get one of my favorite things in the entire trilogy, which is anything to do with the country of Rohan. First of all, another out of his mind music track by Howard Shore. The Rohan theme is so good.
Yep.
It is so good and so iconic. This Edoras, which is the kind of capital city or whatever, they built so much of this, right? And we talked about this way back when we were doing the Frighteners, right? Where he's talking about the fake house they have, and he's like, "Oh, we did a pretty good job, but you can always tell when a house isn't really supposed to be there because it doesn't have that like lived-in feeling. It doesn't have the grass growing up around it." And he said, like, right now, the movie I'm working on, we're actually building the sets like 6 months in advance and letting things grow around them. The little cheeky bastard was talking about this exact thing that we're seeing right now, which is this
city. They built a
city on a hill that they built. And they went out looking for this, and they were like, and they found this hill, like basically almost exactly what Tolkien describes in the book. They found this like hill that they could build this city on, basically. An amazing set. And we get introduced to very quickly a host of really great actors and great performances all in a row. We got Carl Urban in one of his first like big things. Got Miranda Otto, same thing, one of her first big things. And then we get two veteran, just great character actors. Bernard Hill, who plays King Theoden, who's maybe my favorite performance in the movie, possibly. I just think he's so good in this. And Bradley Dourif, obviously, Chucky himself.
Love that guy, yeah.
As Grima Wormtongue.
Yep. X-Files veteran. Love that guy so much. Yeah, like this whole thing, right? Like, you know, this being the second movie, it can kind of make the world weirder. It can expand on it. Like, this is all stuff that we have no sense even exists in the Fellowship of the Ring. This is a whole part of the world that we have not encountered before. And that takes up a lot of, you know, it's a very, very huge chunk of this very long running time of this movie. And, you know, everything with Rohan, as I said, it's kind of a tributary, it's kind of an aside, and yet we get so caught up in this. It's like a movie unto itself almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think...
And I remember seeing this the first time. I was like, wait a minute, where are we now? Like, don't we want to do this thing that we were already set up doing? And, you know, I was kind of like mad at it. Like, we're going to like just branch off from the story here. We're going to put them here and make this so important. And by the end of this, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad they did that.
Yeah. And in the Return of the King, it becomes very important, right? That this what feels like an aside, it actually becomes a very necessary thing, right?
Yeah. But you wouldn't know that.
No,
and even through a lot of this, it's like, Rohan, where the hell is that? Like, they are going here. Can we follow them there? Can we get them to this, you know, get to the fireworks factory? And then it turns out that this actually is the fireworks factory.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry for the very dated Simpsons reference. But
no, it's okay. I love this whole, like I said, the whole vibe of Rohan. I love the whole story. I love the look. I love the kind of like Vikingness, you know, to it. And I think, you know, it's one of these things where you get performances, like especially from Karl Urban, who's not in the movie that much, but is really memorable, right? You come away from it like remembering him quite a bit. And
he's got the perfect face for these types of movies.
Oh my God.
Very young face at this point, right?
Yes.
Like I picture him grizzled now, but this was before. This is pre-grizzled Karl Urban. This is pre-Dread, long before Dread. This
is pretty boy Karl Urban, you know, for sure. And Miranda Otto, same thing. Obviously, she's going to have much more to do for herself in the next movie, obviously. This movie
she's
is
great in this.
She's great in this. Absolutely great in this. You know, but her thing is mostly like, I love Aragorn. Aragorn does not love me. That's like most of her story in this, you know, but once again, playing into the idea of these movies really are setting up 3 movie arcs or 2 movie arcs for these characters, right? Because, you know, you're not going to get the payoff for Éowyn or Theoden's sort of journeys until the next movie, right? Theoden kind of gets there by the end of this, but he's not totally into his own sort of like power yet, and he hasn't really, you know, come into his own by the end of this. It really happens in Return of the King, but he has a great journey in this movie. He has one of the best arcs. Him and Gollum both have like really, I think, the strongest arcs in the Two Towers themselves, because he goes from being this person who is seemingly scared of sort of what's in front of him to, you know, riding out to maybe his death, for glory, basically.
Well, the first couple of scenes he's in, he's kind of not even there, right? He's possessed. And I remember seeing that the first time. What is wrong with that guy?
Yeah.
Like, this old age makeup is great.
Yeah.
The whole, the eyes, the clouded over eyes. I love the look of that is fantastic too. And
Dorth is so good and so creepy and so everything he's supposed to be in these scenes,
He's probably such a cool guy in real life, but yeah, he can play a creep as well as anybody in the movies.
All I've heard is that he's a super cool guy in real life,
he
actually.
Is,
but he is incredibly creepy.
Him and Jeffrey Combs. He reminds me a lot of Jeffrey Combs.
Yeah, definitely. They make him super pale. They give him this like long, stringy black hair. He's always whispering and he's always trying to like flirt with Éowyn.
What does Saruman say to him? He's like giving him this whole like, here's what's going on. You reek of horse.
Yeah.
Love that. You stink. Is it you stink of horse?
You stink of horse, I think is what he says. Yeah, absolutely. We then, we kind of established this Rohan is ready to fall, basically, right? That's like the idea. Saruman's sort of been pressing his advantage there to weaken them so that it's easier for him to take over.
Yeah, there's a lot of war room stuff in this movie. Again, it is in a lot of senses it's a war movie, right? Mm-hmm. And we kind of have to know the geography. We have to know like what is next to where and why this is an important, if they take this, then they could, there's a lot of that kind of stuff. And I think the movie does a really good job of that.
Yeah.
It does it in a way that doesn't make it feel like just pure exposition.
No.
these shots of maps and things like that. Like, it's all just, if you want to sort of follow this, if you want to figure out exactly what the battle plan is and why this is important, because I did this time,
Yeah.
Maybe the first time I saw it, it's like, no, let's just get to the battle scene. But now it's like, okay, I want to know, like, why is strategically, right? Like, does this make sense? And it does. And it's all there if you want it to be, if you want to pick up on it.
Absolutely. And I think we go from here right back to this great orc scene, right? That's when they're hungry, why not them? They're fresh, I can eat their legs. They don't need them.
They won't need those.
Yeah. So great. Again, this is the time where Petey's doing his thing, right? He's like, I'm going to get a little into my like silly horror thing going on.
Yeah, it's
here.
very Dead Alive. I like
very
that
Dead
about
Alive.
it.
Cuts and when the Uruk-hai cuts his head off, we're going to head up again. Another iconic line. Meat's back on the menu, boys. Such a great line. Love the way they do this sort of protracted attack by the Rohirrim. Right, we see them get attacked. We get kind of a cliffhanger, and then we kind of go back to our three main heroes. Where again, I just love this scale of filmmaking. They're running on this plane and just like 300 horses come charging out and just like encircle them, in this big thing. Another line I love, which is the "Do not trust a hope, it is forsaken in these lands." There's just a lot of great lines that are from the books, but you're always kind of like, are they going to be able to work these in? Are they going to feel real? Are they going to feel right? And they do such a good job, and the actors do such a good job delivering, that stuff.
One of the things that these films do really well is, like, again, this war movie thing, this like battle-hardened, war-weary, we've been at this forever. It's a losing battle. Like, we're never going to win. We're never going to make it. We're just kind of like fighting until we all die. And, this kind of camaraderie that comes from that. And we see that a lot in Aragorn. We certainly see it a lot, across this movie with a lot of different characters. And you get a really good sense of that. Like, these are profoundly powerful anti-war movies. And, at the time these came out, right? We were all, 9/11 had just happened. And, we were all thinking maybe we do need to go kick some ass. What was Toby Keith's thing? Put a boot in your ass. It's the American way. I remember really feeling like that. I remember a lot of people I knew kind of fully buying into this idea that, like, war is the answer, right? Like, someone attacks you, you gotta just crush them. And so many people were like, the war on terror. We gotta fight the war on terror. And then we did that for like another 20 years. And at the time when I saw this, I was kind of feeling the same way. And I don't think the anti-war message, the war is hell, everything, the profundity of that really didn't hit me as a younger person, because it was people my age that were 18, 19 years old going off to do this. And I don't want to get like political or anything on the show, but there's so much of that in this movie, right? This anti-war, and I think it is as powerful as the great anti-war movies. It really kind of articulates that theme in a really strong way. And we see it. It's a lot of these performances, it's these moments where these actors are just kind of like looking each other in the eye and, what are we doing here? Like, what a doomed sort of course that we're pursuing, Well,
there's that line from Theoden way at the end of the movie where he says, he says, so much death. What can men do against such reckless hate, know?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And I think the reckless is such a important word in that sentence, right? Where it's like, there's just all of this death happening and it's just spiraling out. There's no sense of duty or honor. It's just how many people can you kill?
Right. And the Tolkien story, right? He fought in World War I and kind of developed this anti-war mindset. And I'm sure that's all in the books, but like the way it's articulated in these films, which just could be really fun, really interesting adventure movies, the way it's kind of woven through this really, really, really kind of blows me away now, especially. I mean, I guess some part of my brain was picking up on it back in 2002, but now it's really strongly sort of coming out to me.
Yeah. And I mean, I think a big part of that too, right, is the Treebeard stuff, is the forest stuff, right? Which one thing, Tolkien, way ahead of his time, he's talking philosophically in a lot of this stuff with like the trees talking to each other and moving with each other. He's so ahead of his time for real fucking science because like that's what trees do. Like, trees do talk to one another. Trees do like move and grow in ways that help each other and protect each other. You know, that is something that's real in science, and to have it such in the heart of this is so fascinating to me, and it to have such an environmental
for sure. I mean, people weren't thinking about that back then the way they came to later on.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think again that's why these books in the 60s and the 70s, like that generation, really kind of gravitated toward this stuff. It wasn't ahead of its time in a lot of ways. Yeah. And by 2002, you know, it all is starting to really make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Another old Petey thing is, you know, when Aragorn and them get to the orcs, there's like heads on pikes or whatever, and I'm like, he just can't help himself.
Yeah, we got to decapitate. They're like, there has to be decapitation here. Like, we're going to make some really profound points and philosophical things, but also, like, we're going to behead some people. We're going to cut off some limbs. This is the most violent PG-13 movie I think I've ever seen.
It's very violent. It's extremely violent.
I forgot how much, you know, impaling and decapitation and sword slashing and open wounds. Like, I'm surprised they got away with as much as they did. Maybe not in the theatrical. Maybe they put some of it back in for the extended.
Yeah, no, a lot of it was in the theatrical, though.
I think so. I mean, I remembered a lot of it, yeah.
Notice the blood isn't really red, though. That's a big part of it.
No.
For the
but we're spilling an awful lot of it.
For the ratings board, you know? I will say this. Thrilling for me, the Aragorn tracking scene is like thrilling for me.
Yeah.
I love that they do it. I love that it gives him a dimension to his character, like kind of shows you like another way that he is very powerful. And
it's the first image we see of him, right? It's him lying on the ground, and you know they've picked up their pace or whatever.
Yeah, he's listening. But even this scene where he's like, you know, two hobbits laid
I
here.
know, and it's just this is really nicely set up. You know, 20 minutes earlier.
And did you know, Nick, when he kicks that helmet, he actually broke his toe, and that's why he screams. It's just.
They left it in the movie because
I had to say it. I had to say it. The most overstated, I think, fact about all of the Lord of the Rings is that exact thing. But yeah, the tracking thing is so great, and I love how it intercuts the real events. Like, you know, he's seeing them as he's tracking it. One of those things. It's just one of those things. It's almost like the Batman being a great detective, which we never really get in any of the movies. Yeah. I was so hoping when I saw this movie the first time that there would be something like that in this movie, because that's a big part of Aragorn. He's a tracker. That's a big, huge part of his character. And so I loved seeing that as like a thing he could do. I love the way this is all drawn out, because this is all leading up to this incredible reveal that, like, not having read the books, I didn't know. I had no idea. When they said the white wizard is walking in the forest, I was like, oh, no, I know who that guy is. I hate that guy. Yeah. Turns out I was wrong. Turns out it's Gandalf. And I love that. It's a Tolkien thing, but I love that it's in the movies too, that, you know, when Gandalf talks about his journey, like, you know, he died and he was gone in his mind for ages and ages and ages and ages.
And then he comes back, right?
Yeah. Like he doesn't remember his name is Gandalf, you know?
The performance, that is what they used to call me. Like Ian McKellen, again, so good in these movies. Yeah. Like it's like superhuman. Yeah. Other classy British guys could have played that part. Nobody could have done it like he did.
No. Because there's just this, like we talked about last time, and it happens in that moment where they're going to see Theoden. And he's like, you know, you wouldn't take a staff from an old man or whatever.
That
old man is walking.
Wink.
The little wink he does.
It's like a split second. It's perfect. Yep.
And it's like the character of Gandalf microcosm down into one facial expression.
Yes.
And that's what great acting can do. It's like McKellen just gets it. He just understands the character backwards and forwards, and he knows that little wink is just something Gandalf would do, you know? And I love that about his performance. He's great in this movie. He's out of this movie for a long time. The next time we're really going to talk about him seriously is in Return of the King, because he is unbelievable in Return of the King, and we'll get there. But, you know, I love the reveal of him. I love how they mix his voice with Christopher Lee's voice when he's first talking. So even if you have that moment where you're even still sort of confused, like, is this Christopher Lee? Why aren't they showing his face in this moment? Yeah. You know, I love that reveal, how they do it.
Well, the way he just steps out of the light, right?
Yeah.
We get this blinding white light, and then he steps forward, and there is his face, right? Like perfectly, legible, and it's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
And right? Like, you knew. I think one of the things that I really benefited from seeing this the first time is, you know, I really like Gandalf in that first movie. I really missed him. I figured we'd be getting him in flashbacks. And I knew Ian McKellen was in this, and I was happy about that, right? But like the fact that he actually comes back and takes an active role in the story the way he does, I mean, that bowled me over. I was like, we're getting the band back together. I'm so happy. Like, smiling all the way through this the first time, and very much so this time as well. And even though I knew it was happening, but I forgot how it happened, and I forgot that incredible shot where he steps out of the light there. I mean, there's so many ways to do this, and I feel like they nailed it so many times. Like, this movie is like great scene after great scene after great scene. I mean, we're not even that far into it yet.
We're not that far into it at all.
We've skipped stuff that I also really like. So yeah. So I guess we should move on. But
and little funny moments too, like when they're walking in the woods and they're talking about the woods, and Gimli has his axe up, and they're like, put down your axe. That's really funny. I mean, haven't even talked about. Yes, Gimli gets some short shrift, but John Rhys Davies has plenty to do in this movie because he also voices Treebeard.
Yes.
And again, one of those things where it's a talking, walking tree, and all really that happens is he walks them to a place in the woods and they just talk for a while. That's really all that happens. And, I think it could, again, be something that be boring to watch. It could be something that you could easily, probably, if you were thinking about condensing these movies, cut it out of the movies. It has important themes and stuff like that. But if you really never destroyed Isengard the way they destroyed it, you probably wouldn't notice that much, right? Doesn't really do that much for what comes next.
We'll get to that, though. I was like standing up and cheering in my living room.
Yes, I agree with
during
you.
that scene. Yeah, I mean, even the Merry and Pippin stuff, right? Like it's the stoner movie. Like if this is a bunch of different genres, like that's what they are. They're the buddy comedy. They're Harold and Kumar in some sense.
Yeah.
But like, there's a moment with Treebeard where he lays them down in the forest on a bed of moss, like sleep little shirelings, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like little tear to my eye there, this like very fatherly, because there's no Ent children. And like, he sort of takes that paternal, I guess, fatherly stuff. Going back to our first episode on Tron Legacy, that always hits me pretty hard. But like, it's just this great little moment in this movie that does not lack for emotional moments, right?
No.
Merry and Pippin are the characters we kind of care about the least. And yet in that little moment there, like the way Treebeard is taking care of them, I think so, it expresses something like that like goodness that's kind of at the heart of this, like that genuine, real kindness toward others that I think Tolkien's really getting at. Like that's a moment that I think we really see that in. It's wonderful.
And it's a little bit of whimsy as well, right? It's whimsy. And there's no
such a fairy tale thing. This this talking, walking tree, and he tells boring stories, puts them to sleep as they're like, he carries them around the forest. It's very Disney. I love it. I absolutely love. Again, Treebeard is another character that he's great.
Yeah, you get that whimsy, which is very important, I think, because the other two stories are very dark, right? There's not a lot of whimsy in either one of those other stories, and also this type of stuff is very important to like the DNA of the Lord of the Rings, right? Nature has a say, right? Nature has a place and it needs to be involved. And I think also it speaks what Gandalf says in Moria in the first movie, which is there are other forces at work, Frodo, than just the forces of evil, right? Like there are other things here. There is hope and there is goodness, like you said, and you have it here, right?
And we see, again, like one of the things that Saruman does is very distinctly focused on is burning down the forest, rip up the trees, put them into the mines. They are fuel for the fires of war. Yeah. And here they come back and oh man, that scene toward the end is great. We'll get there in a few hours, a few weeks or something.
I mean, the one thing about Gandalf the White is he does have a sick-ass horse who is, in fact, the Lord of all horses.
The Lord of all horses.
He doesn't even have a normal, good horse. Yep. He has the Lord of all horses.
The wide shot where that horse starts running toward the camera, like TriStar Pictures logo. I love it.
Absolutely.
Like he holds that long enough. We're like, yeah, that is the Lord of all horses.
Yeah. And I love all that stuff. And I think, you best believe also Treebeard singing to them, singing his little song, not in the theatrical version of this movie.
No.
If you can believe it. Anytime you hear a song in the Two Towers, you can clock it as not in the theatrical version of the movie.
But let me ask, I mean, cut this out of the show if you want, but I just want to know for me.
Yeah.
Isn't a lot of that in the books? Wasn't Tolkien very much focused on poetry and lyricism and like what I've heard about the books from all the people, so many people I know have read them, is that, he wasn't interested in writing battle scenes. He was interested in writing songs that kind of fit the lore of this world.
Yes.
These tell the legends of Middle Earth and things like that. And I find that very fascinating. The idea that he's creating kind of these ephemeral things that are part of this world but don't directly affect the story. I love that.
So many songs, so many poems. Tolkien was a professor of Anglo-Saxon. He was a linguist, for the most part.
Created languages for all these different races. Yeah.
He loved naming things. He loved poetry. He loved the songs. He loved the thematic elements. But you're absolutely right. Like, Helm's Deep is one chapter in the book. It's 17 pages long, and it's directly in the middle of the Two Towers. It is like a thing that happens along the way, right? It is not a climactic, end of movie battle. So I definitely remember when that was, when that was brought up on the lead up to this, the interviews, the press and stuff like that. I remember being like, that's interesting. Because when you read these books before the movies had come out, I didn't stop and think, man, that's going to be a hell of a scene. Like, in my mind, I was like, are they going to cut that out? It's like that kind of thing. Obviously, it is so good in the movie. I would not trade the way this movie is structured for anything. I think they did I think Jackson made the right decisions. But I think, Tolkien really did not care about the mechanics of the battles very much. He'd be like, there was a battle, this thing happened, that kind of thing. And a lot of that's in these movies is brought in by Jackson, right? That's a
very playful Peter Jackson. He's building models and using toy soldiers, something like 600 toy soldiers to plot the positions of different people. And it all works so well, If you just want to watch this on that level, you're going to get, this is a couple of years after Gladiator, so we like these kind of ancient battle sort of movies, and this will give you one, for the ages. I don't think it's really been topped.
No, I don't think so. I don't even think Jackson tops himself in Return of the King, even though that battle is great. No.
Yep.
This is, I think, the battle.
It's a very distinctive, it's a siege, it's a medieval siege sequence, and it's as good as you're ever going to see.
He likens it to Zulu, that movie Zulu. That's what he said his main inspiration for it was that sort of long build up to all hell breaking loose, basically. And this idea of very small number of people.
That's a Western thing too. That's Rio Bravo. That's a very sort of quintessential, classic Hollywood thing.
Which I think is one of the reasons Two Towers is so interesting as a second movie, because unlike most second movies and trilogies, it's not trying to be The Empire Strikes Back, right? The Empire Strikes Back is one of my favorite movies of all time. It is the blockbuster movie that every blockbuster movie has been chasing since the day it was released, right? Every person who makes what they think is a serious blockbuster movie chases that feeling, right? Of we can have all the adventure, but it can also be really serious and really impactful and really dark, right? It's always the thing people are chasing, and most fail to get there, right? It is a trope on itself right now. And Two Towers does not do that, right? It is not looking to be it is dark, but it is not necessarily the dark middle chapter, right? It is not really any more dark than what's to come, right? It's just, this is the middle of our story. Back to when Gandalf comes back, one of my favorite things, and we keep talking about how they keep bringing it back to the people, right? And how important the people are, is that moment where, he's talking about, you see a little doubt in him, right? Where he's saying I sent Frodo alone into this place. And he's like, well, he's not alone. Sam's with them. And he smiles.
Yep.
And I get teary about that moment. And he's like, oh yes, that's very good indeed, or whatever, And it's he knows, right? He knows that no one person can do this by themselves. No one country can do it by themselves. It's going to take, loyalty and goodness, and that's the most important thing.
And it nicely connects the two halves of the story here, right? Because we are following Frodo and Sam for a lot of this, and boy, there's a moment with the two of them a couple minutes before this is over that makes the juices flow.
For sure. But I talked about the animation thing on the Smeagol thing before, but that scene when he's talking to him about where he came from, and he didn't used to be much different from a hobbit, and says his name, and that look in his eyes, this time much more than ever, it hit me like, can you imagine losing yourself that much to something that you're, something so destructive that you're addicted to, that like someone just saying your name is like out of your perception of, your reality, like it's like this. He hasn't probably heard his name in hundreds of years, like that's an insane thing to think about when you really place it in like a character sense, right? And what's going on.
And you mentioned also like when Gandalf says kind of the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
This idea that someone you were such a long time ago, like there's still some piece of that still inside you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's another, that's, there are political sort of, human ideas. And then there's like stuff, metaphysical, philosophical stuff that kind of goes beyond that too. There's and just all beautifully articulated in a way that doesn't like smash you over the head with it.
Right.
We can have these conversations now, but also you can just watch all 3 hours and 45 minutes of this movie and not even think about that.
And be like, it's a cool ass action adventure movie. Look
at that orc getting decapitated. Awesome.
Exactly.
Give me more. And it does.
Meat is back on the menu, boys.
Yep. Yeah.
We haven't even mentioned the flying ring wraiths yet.
Oh, love those.
Which is such a cool ass thing.
Yep. Like, is that not the most metal image ever? Yeah. That thing with the hooded rider on the back of it, like flying over this marsh full of white-faced corpses staring up into the sky. I was like, damn, like it's literally the most metal image I've ever seen.
It's crazy. Yes, it's crazy. Love the concept of the dead marshes, right? This idea.
Me too. It's so creepy.
Yeah, this like almost like, to bring it back to the World War I thing, right? This like no man's land, like just
fields of corpses. Sure.
Yeah, this land will never recover from the sort of pain and blood it's seen, in its past, right? And I love that you hear the little bit of like the battle like sounds in the background, like that battle you saw at the very beginning. It really gives you like places you in where you are, right? In a lot of ways, and I really like that a lot. I like the way they do the effects on it. I like the way Jackson does his like ghost thing. Obviously, we'll get a lot more of that in Return of the King.
I do too, but I really like the sort of stillness when it's just, they just look like dead bodies, and of course, we get that really slow camera movement and we're sort of moving over the water. We see this corpse facing upward. We know those eyes are going to open, right? But like the way it's the deliberateness of it, it's not a jump scare. It's kind of inevitable. And you could very easily make it a jump scare in a lesser movie. But here it's just like, it has kind of more of a weight to it than that. We feel that these things are alive even before we actually see it.
Yeah.
And I really like that as well.
Yeah, me too.
Makes it a lot just sort of, it's a nightmare image, right? It's something straight out of like a German expressionist film or something like that.
Absolutely. And then we get the Black Gate. Right, which
amazing.
It does not disappoint. Like, they built it up a lot, doesn't disappoint. And the music, when that camera like jib shot goes over that ridge.
Yep.
And you hear that the music like crescendos, that really dark music crescendos, and you see all that stuff going on. Such a powerful image. And I remember it so clearly from the trailer for it. With that, with the Requiem for the Dream music was in that trailer.
Yeah, Clint Mansell's amazing score, which, that's a movie that was like banging around in our heads so much back then. Yeah. In the early 2000s.
That like, like that thing. I just remember it's so clear, that image from the trailer.
Whose idea was it? What a brilliant tactic,
such a good idea.
To cut the images from this movie with that score.
Yeah. And then, 10 million film school students put it in there or whatever.
Well, yeah, and Hollywood too. Like this, it was definitely used in other trailers, but never, for anything as good as this or to use that incredible effect the way it was here.
Such a good trailer.
But yeah, what a great set, what a great design. Just everything about it is like as foreboding. Like we saw so many things in Fellowship that are like, that place is terrifying. And then you see this, it's like, holy shit, like it gets worse.
And you truly have that feeling like, what the, like, they can't do this. Like, there's no way they can do this, Yeah,
it takes 2 cave trolls just to open the door.
Yeah.
But these little hobbit people are going to just sneak right in. Just walk right in.
Yeah.
One does not simply.
And the one does not simply. And he was right. One does not simply walk into Mordor.
Well, I forgot what happened with them after this, right? Like, you know, again, my memories of this were so vague, and I was like, do they find a way to just walk right in through the Black Gate? Like, they can't, right?
Yeah.
You get that wonderful scene with the elven cloak that, you know, disguises them, makes them look like a rock. Again, it's like a James Bond gadget. Like, I like the way those get sort of periodically used through this, but, you know, also they've designed it in such a, because I'm sure a lot of this is not in the books, right? You know, where the other scrapes they get into, well, you can't use that to get out of it, right? Like, we've seen it, it's done, the rope, you know, all of those things. We see them once, it's a cool sequence, and then we kind of do other things where it's not like, well, they could just use the cloak again, you know?
Yeah. I mean, in the books, definitely I don't remember how much the cloak is used in the books, but it uses that function. The whole idea is like, it's not really like a camouflage thing. It just sort of like has that, like, it takes people's focus off of you, basically, right? And they use it as like they look like The Rock, you know, so they don't get seen. But the idea is just like, you know, you can't really, it has like almost like a charm on it that like makes people like not look at you when you have it. I
got to tell you, that was another shot that I went back and watched 3 times. Is like, that really does look like a rock. How did they do that?
Yeah,
like,
it's good.
It looks like they painted a piece of cloth and put, you know.
Yeah, that's what it does look
amazing.
Like. And I love the little ways that Jackson is giving you information. Like, these are people who are walking in. It's not just monsters who are fighting for Sauron, right? Like, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about this. Like, Gollum will say they're wicked men, you know, or whatever. But like, we're not going to focus on it. We're not going to harp on it. But it's like, you just got to know that this isn't just like a thing where he has like a bunch of like little goblin men who fight for him. Like, there's a lot of stuff.
Well, the Faramir monologue that comes a little bit later is exactly about that.
Yeah, and that isn't in the theatrical version. You're talking about the flashback, right? You're talking about the flashback?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, we'll get to it.
We'll get there. Okay, all right. We cut back to Gandalf and them getting to Edoras, and this is like the basically the Theoden like waking up scene or what have you. I love that, like, the one group of like guards won't stop them. He's like, just stop. Like, oh, this, I know who Gandalf is. We're not gonna even do this. And then like Gimli, Legolas, and Aragorn beat all those guards up without any weapons. Love that.
Yeah. That little hand-to-hand fight that's happening. Like, you don't even see it because Gandalf is in the foreground. That's all going on in the background. They're just beating it. Like, that would be a set piece in most movies, and it's like background action here. I love that.
Yeah, and I will say we missed talk about the scene where Grima is, you know, Wormtongue is talking to Eowyn. He does that thing like, you know, when the walls close in around you, and he's almost like, it's such a great speech, and he's so sinister and yucky. I just love his performance.
Lecherous,
in this movie. I love the de-aging thing that happens. I love the way it's such a simple, like, you know, kind of analog effect, but it works to such good effect. Love Theoden's sword so much. I think it's like one of the coolest swords in the whole trilogy. The kind of like heart sort of like hilt thing in a movie full of just like cool ass swords, right? Everyone has a cool ass weapon. It's so good. And again, I think that Bernard Hill is so good in this movie and in both of in these last 2 movies. But this next scene where he's after they bury his kid or whatever, when he's doing the thing where he's like, you know, no parent should ever have to bury their child. Like, it's just so good. The emotion is so raw in that scene. And once
the funeral procession, there's this shot, this diagonally, you know, dolly shot where I think it's Legolas and Aragorn are just sort of walking down the hill past the mourners. Oh, it's incredible. Like, very slow, and
Miranda Otto is singing this like funeral song. This like
flowers, you know, that grow on they grew on the graves of my forebears, and now it's my son, and you see the flower. You know, it's all, you know, it's not the most complicated metaphor, but it works so well, and it's so, you know, it suits this place and the scene, and then, you know, kind of tells you who these characters are. I really like it. And again, a dedication though to giving these characters emotional beats to play. I forget his name, right? But like,
Theodred
there's an actor.
But
Okay, he's dead the first time. I mean, he's grievously wounded, and then he dies, and yet these characters that we've never met before, that we wouldn't have cared about because we couldn't have even known they existed, and yet now we're fully invested in this. So like, it's an incredible thing that this film does. Is like, it just brings out, there's so much going on in this world already, and like, here's a new thing, and you're going to care about this now. And I think by this point, even the first time I saw it, I was like, okay, I'm on board for whatever happens here.
And again, once again, all the music in this Rohan stuff is so good. I just love that sort of like Celtic almost thing that Shore is doing, for them, and all the themes that play there. And I think, once again, it's really scenes where I think another filmmaker might cut it. It's like, we can just have him, mention or seem sad that his son is dead, and it can be mentioned. We don't have to have a funeral scene. We don't have to have this whole scene where we're really playing up the emotional reality of this guy's life. But I think it really helps us in this next scene where he's sort of refusing to go to war, right? Where he's saying like, I do not want anyone else to die. We're gonna do what we've always done and go to this place, right? Which includes this idea that we had way earlier. We have this mother sort of sending away her children, right, from this like mob that's going to burn the place. And it's one of these things again where it's like, let's just show you that there is a human cost to what's happening here. It's not just a village burning. There is a mother with two kids, and she's sending those kids away, basically dooming herself, we think, to die to save her kids' lives, right? That kid is, he has a thing throughout the whole movie, right? He ends up being kind of, a sort of featured background, person through the whole movie. And I really like that is like a thing that they do, right? That they try to give you like, these are real people. This is a place where people live. It's not just a pretty area where some houses are and a king lives, right? There are people here. And that's mostly what he's concerned with. And I think him being like, we're going to go, we're not going to fight. If you didn't have the scene, right, where you see him grieving his son, you might be less sympathetic to him. You might automatically go like, this guy's just like another obstacle in the way of our heroes trying to do what we know is the right thing to do.
And so many, again, this is a war movie, right? And so many movies like that are going to do, like you said, the idea of just burning down the village. You get a couple of like gory shots of, people being pierced by swords and things like that. It's like, okay, this is horrible. This is, but like the fact that we have emotional stakes here, and the fact that it's not cheap about it. Like, we see the mother with her children early in the film. I'm skipping way ahead. Like you said, he's kind of a featured background extra or whatever. I love the fact that she's alive later, you know, because it's so clearly setting up that, you send your children off, you're going to die, right? You're sacrificing yourself for them. That's the easy way out, right? Like to actually have, this moment of hope, this reuniting, this scene later on. It's just a moment, it's a couple of seconds. It's like one shot. We see her, I don't think she isn't even a named character, but like she reunites with her children. She embraces them later in the movie. And it's like, yeah, we can do that here. Like we're confident enough that we're not just going to pull the easy string here to make you sad because these children's mother died. Right. Skipping way ahead in the trilogy, my understanding of all this from the beginning is like, oh, Frodo's got to jump into Mount Doom with the ring, right? Like, he has to sacrifice himself because that's how these stories work. And the fact that that's not what happens in the end made me love this so much the first time I saw it. Like, it's one of my favorite stories I've ever seen because it doesn't just do the easy, obvious thing. And obviously that goes back to the books, but how many movies have, like Terminator 2, that wonderful relationship between the Terminator and young John Connor, and then he jumps into the fire at the end because he has to, right? Because that's the only way this story can end. You don't get that here, and I absolutely love that. And I think this thing, with this mother and her children and her coming back and, it's not all despair, it's not all doom and gloom. I love that. And I think it sets that up for the next movie really nicely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I always feel that, even on television shows, right? Like the thing to do to shock people and to get an emotional response is kill a character they really like. Game of Thrones did that an awful lot. Game of Thrones, obviously heavily inspired by this that we're talking about right now. And this is so much better because it's not just looking to do that, and so that when there is an actual death like Boromir in the first film, it hits us a lot harder that way, I think. Yeah.
It's so funny because Jackson and Philippa Boyens in the behind the scene features go like, one of the sad things about, or the tough things about this movie is like nobody dies in the movie.
Right.
And that might sound like a weird thing to say, but like Boromir dying at the end of Fellowship of the Ring gives us a big emotional gut punch to be able to like hang the end of the movie on, right? We don't have that here. We have to figure out a different way to communicate and give you emotional investment in what's happening without a character dying, right? And I think one of the things that the series, it's so funny that you say that about Return of the King, and obviously we'll talk about this more next time when we talk about Return of the King. But one of the things that some people dog the series for is that they're like, at the end, there's nobody dies. So like, what's the sacrifice? And it's like, just killing a couple characters is not really a dramatically satisfying way to figure out your story.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
It's like it's a cheap way, honestly, to go like, I'm gonna make you feel like this is important because I'm gonna kill a character that you like. Right? That's not necessarily the most dramatically satisfying way. And I think honestly the way that those stories end in Return of the King is in some ways sadder than if someone died, and we'll talk about that next time. But I think that's seated here where, you get the scene where, Sam is trying to convince Frodo, he's like, we have to leave this creature behind. Like, it's not, like, it's going to betray us. This is not, like, something that, he's a villain. Like, he will take it. All he cares about is the ring. And Frodo has that thing, which I think is so important, which is that, he's like, I have to, help him. And, he asks him why. And he goes, I have to believe that he can come back from this because he's identifying with what Gollum is going through, right? And he needs to believe that if Gollum can be redeemed in some way, then obviously he can be redeemed in some way because he's already starting to realize that he doesn't know if he's coming back from this, right? In one way or another. And we have that Galadriel bit where she basically says that, right? She says the subtext out loud, but that's definitely a big theme of this, right? Is like, not only do you physically survive, but what is the mental toll of you surviving, which obviously comes a lot from Tolkien being in World War I and like coming back and being like, there are things that you cannot leave behind. Like, you see certain things, you don't recover. It doesn't matter how beautiful the place you go back to is, you're not getting back from it. And Frodo is starting to reckon with that idea at this moment.
Because it's really, he's the protagonist. If there's one protagonist of the trilogy, it's him. And in the first movie, he kind of he grows in one way, right? Like, he's never really left home before, he's never gone out on adventures like Bilbo does. So over the course of that one, he sort of grows up in that way, right? Like, it's Luke Skywalker. It's like, I'm going out into the world for the first time and encountering all the darkness and the horrors and the wonders and everything else.
Right.
That's one part of coming of age. In this movie, he matures in a completely different way, right? Like, can I show mercy to this creature, right? Can I find my humanity or my hobbitness, my essential goodness, right? In the middle of all of this, this deception and again, horror and despair and all that stuff. So it works I'm sure it's in the books as well, but like, I think the arc that he takes from movie to movie, like it's a different arc, but it's a really important part of his character, and it all kind of pays off in the last movie. Like, it's all just set up so nicely, and it's like I said, it's so moving. These scenes that I was like, oh, I'm not looking forward to those scenes. I enjoyed them so much. Just him kind of wrestling with, Sam kind of the devil in one ear, like, let's leave him behind, let's kill him, and Frodo. Like, the first thing Frodo does with Gollum is, sticks a sword up to his neck. So like, you've seen this one before, right? I can easily kill you right now. Yeah. And the way he has to sort of deal with the fact that it would be very like, Gollum is not a strong character. He's just this little skinny, he's flexible and agile, I guess, but they could just kind of snap his neck at any time. And, the way he just won't do it and refuses to and tries to see the good in him, that's just as important as him kind of seeing the world the way he does in the first movie. I really like all of that as well.
So that scene where we're talking about with Frodo leads right into that scene with Gollum talking to himself, which obviously we kind of talked about a little bit earlier. Just a astounding scene we talked about, from voice performance to digital puppetry, all of this kind of stuff. And really, I think, sells the idea of who Gollum is as a character, right? A very important thing to be like, he's got these kind of two personalities in his head, right? He's got kind of the person he was before, and then this thing that the ring kind of turned him into. And they're competing with each other. And one is clearly malevolent, and one is clearly has some sweetness, to him. And I think it really helps us understand that character a lot more than we would have otherwise. And obviously, like, this not a scene that's in the books. Like, this is not a scene that's in the books. We don't get perspective things like this with Gollum so much. We're seeing everything through sort of a Frodo and Sam filter in the books. So, I think really sells this, and it really sells the whole character, the whole performance, kind of everything about it is really contained within this scene. And it looks great too. It looks unbelievable. So
yeah, and again, it's a split personality thing. It's a thing we've seen in movies before, and this is again an animated character. It's a CGI character, but it's done in a way where we're not like a lot of things in here. We're not just bashing you over the head with it, right? Like you really do feel that kind of push and pull. It's not like. You know what? I think a lot of it is the writing too.
Yeah, for sure.
where you sort of understand both sides of this character, and there's a logic. It's not just his bad side. The Gollum side isn't just crazy and evil, but is just very determined to get this thing that he wants so badly, and feels that the world kind of owes him that. And how dare anyone? And we get that later in the movie as well. And then his nicer side also, it's like. But wait, like there is goodness in the world. I've been shown goodness. It's really nicely done so that it's not just like the goodest good and the evilest evil.
No. I mean, really, the Gollum side of his personality is much more just a survivalist, right? It is the thing that has kept him alive for all of this time. And also the thing that is, addicted, right, to the ring. It's the personification of his addiction to having that ring. And I mean, look, I think like if this was a reality set movie, it would be a very problematic scene, right? But I think because it's a fantasy scene with a fantasy creature, you're able to sort of take it a little bit more. And it's crazy because if you watch the behind the scenes like of Circus doing it, he's doing all of the things. Like he's doing all of the turning and all of the expression changes all in camera, to himself. It's really kind of astounding.
Well, and Jackson shoots it in such a way where it's not just, shot, reverse shot. It'll be very, very easy. One is lit dark and one is lit light.
No.
Kind of, it's more dynamic than that. And it captures it in a way that's not just like the most obvious way to do it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then we get to what is one of the most, I would say, if you're talking to people who read the books, you're gonna get to what is now one of the most contentious changes that the movie's made, which is we meet Faramir, who is Boromir's brother, very fan favorite character in the books for sure. We also see some more like kind of mini battle stuff. We see the elephant, the Oliphant.
Love that.
Here as well, which is great. We get a little bit of time for wonder. Sam is like, whoa, like crazy that we're actually seeing this right now, We meet Faramir, and Faramir's whole deal in the books is that he doesn't care about the ring at all. He's like the opposite of his brother. He's basically like, I would not pick this thing up if it sat by the side of the road, basically.
Interesting, because that's definitely not what we get in the movie.
Yeah, he's basically like, what can I do to help you, essentially?
Yeah.
Now,
it's one of the major conflicts in this is that he kind of does exactly the same thing his brother did. Before we get to that, though, before we know who he is and what happens. So there's this moment where these marauders with the Oliphants, they're riding through, and then Faramir and his guys just come in and kind of slaughter them with arrows and stuff like that. And there's dead, a soldier from the other side who's dead. And Frodo kind of makes an observation about it. And this is the monologue that I was talking about.
Okay.
But this blew me away. I watched it like 3 or 4 times. Again, the older I get, the more of a sort of anti-war kind of mindset I have. And, needless killing is never good. And this idea that, Frodo just kind of sees this guy. I forget the line that Frodo has about, he's evil and good thing that you killed him, right? And Faramir kind of goes into this thing. It's shot really simply, he's just kind of looking down at this corpse, and, he was just a man, and who knows, like, if he actually wanted to be here, and what drove him to take this side in this conflict. And I'm paraphrasing, and it's watch the scene. It's probably on YouTube or something like that. But what a profound idea that this movie just kind of slows down for a minute or two to express with this character who we've never met before. It's a great. David Wenham is really, really, really good in this movie.
Yes, he is.
And it's just this incredibly powerful moment. And this idea, we're talking about with the Black Gate, right? Like all these human soldiers kind of joining this evil army. And it's like, where are they coming from? It also shows you how big this world is and how there are all these different sort of races and factions and countries that are sort of all, fighting for something, right? Like they're not all just like, it's not just evil. Like we don't just want to kill people. We want something. And so what drives you, like you can't see the enemy as faceless. And it's an important moment for Frodo. I think it's in the theatrical edition, right? This monologue. I don't know.
So I don't think it is. I don't think it is.
I mean, I think it's the best moment in the movie. So that's unfortunate.
And Wenham is wonderful in that scene. And I think the extended edition does a much better job than the theatrical version does of giving you more of who Faramir is to fill out who his character is.
Okay.
And I think that, not that I think the theatrical version doesn't do a bad job with him at all. And functionally for a movie, Faramir cannot have the same role he has in the books. It just doesn't work.
Right.
You cannot set up that this ring is this all powerful corrupting thing that could corrupt Aragorn, and then just say this guy for some reason can just say like, I don't care about this thing. Because it takes away the power of the ring. It makes your main characters look, sort of weaker in comparison. Like, why not just give the ring to Faramir?
This character has not been privy to any of the conversations that have happened about the ring up to this point.
Yeah.
So why
just
would
give the
he
ring
have
to Faramir and let him have it then?
Attitude,
what's the difference if he doesn't care about it, Now, in the books, there is other characters.
That would make things easy for them.
There's other characters who have this kind of relationship with the ring, but those are not in the movie. So it wouldn't make sense to have Faramir do that. Also, the way they, and when I talk about this movie being an interesting work of adaptation, the way they adapted the Two Towers, the big sort of conflict for Frodo and Sam in the Two Towers book is the Shelob confrontation, which happens at the end. That's not here. It's in Return of the King. So you need something to kind of be pushing against Frodo and Sam in their part of the movie. And, the way they talk about it as far from a scripting perspective, they're like, you cannot have this big climactic battle scene at Helm's Deep and this big climactic, like, Shelob scene cross-cutting at the same time because they cancel each other out. You'll just be left with no feeling whatsoever. One of them has to be like the dramatic, emotional through line. One of them has to be the action through line, and you have to pick which one you want to do. So they did what they did. It's tough for book readers because Faramir is such a beloved character in the books because Frodo and Sam go through so much shit, and then finally you get to Faramir and you think, oh God, it's Boromir's brother. It's going to be so bad. And then he's so nice that you're like, oh my God, what a relief while you're reading a 1,200 page book, but in a movie it doesn't work. So they implement Faramir in a similar way, right? But they give him a different motivation, right, than Boromir does. He's not obsessed with the ring, but he is obsessed with getting his father's favor. All of the Gondor flashback stuff that's in this is not in the theatrical version. You do not see any of that stuff.
John Lurie plays their father, which is...
John Noble. John Noble.
John Lurie's the Jarmusch guy.
John Noble. He's not in there. You don't see Sean Bean at all, really, any of that stuff in the theatrical version. I think all those scenes are great in this. I think they work. I think they serve to expand out on Faramir's character in a really nice way. It gives Wenham more to play off of, all that stuff. I love that speech you're talking about. I think it really makes the ending of the movie work so well when he says, I think we finally understand each other, Frodo Baggins. It's the same thing that he's saying, right? Basically. And this applicable versus allegory stuff we talked about in another one, it's so applicable to like, you're thinking about modern geopolitical conflicts, with like why is this person fighting for this person you think is bad? Is it because that person is promising them a life that they don't have right now? Maybe that's the reason. Like, exactly. I loved all that stuff. The whole like his sense of duty is no less than ours or whatever he says, which is great. I love that stuff.
War will make corpses of us all, I think is the line.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's it, right? And that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. But I do think they do a great job with him in this movie. I think Wenham is great in the movie, and I think he gets an arc. And, that's the thing. Faramir doesn't have an arc in the books. It's basically like, I'm really good, and I end really good. There's nothing to play. So you give an actor something to play, and I think he does really well. I will say that, like, where this middle part of the movie is the part of the movie that I won't say I like the least because I like all of it, but it is, I think, the mushiest part of the entire trilogy, which is this stuff where Frodo is prisoner of Faramir and the whole like warg attack into fake out Aragorn death section, which is the part where I think the movie does its poorest job of pushing the plot forward in a really super engaging way.
Well, because it's kind of all foregone conclusions, right? Like, we know that they're going to end up in Helm's Deep. Mm-hmm. We know we're going to see Gandalf come back at, on the fifth day, whatever.
Aragorn
we know Aragorn isn't dead. We know Frodo is going to get past this particular obstacle that feels like a little bit, screenwritery, just kind of a contrivance to sort of prevent him from getting where he's going. But I was saying before, it's like great scene after great scene after great scene. This is where that kind of breaks down a little bit. Although the battle with the wargs is a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun, though. I think it is the effect that holds up the least well in the entire trilogy. I think the wargs at sometimes just don't look great. And I think even that battle scene, like, what Jackson is so good at, and we'll talk about this in Helm's Deep pretty soon, he understands that a battle scene is actually made up of a bunch of little tiny battles that make the battle interesting. And I don't feel like the warg thing, it has the Gimli thing, which I think is fun, right? Where he's like underneath the thing.
Falls on him and he's still fighting his way out from underneath.
Yeah, like set piece inside the set piece that really stands out there. You do get the cool Legolas gun up on the horse thing, which I think is fun. But like the Aragorn going over the side thing is just very much like, it's like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade with the tank. It's like almost exactly that same thing.
It is, yeah, sure.
And it really is, I think the problem with it is that it's a scene written for a function, which is that you need Aragorn to get a little bit more Arwen time, like in flashbacks. And also you need him to see the host coming to Helm's Deep so he can tell people that they're coming. So that's, I think, why it doesn't work as well as a lot of other things work, because it just feels like a thing that they feel like had to happen to do two other things. And that's just not satisfying as a plot point.
Well, it's true. It's very like action serial cliffhangery. I think that works a lot better in an Indiana Jones movie than in this, that otherwise is such a nicely developed and realized story. These do kind of mushy, I think is a great word to describe this section where, things are happening just because we got to have things happening. Yeah. We're getting from point A to point B, and it's, but like, to the credit of this film, the whole second movie could be that, right? Like in a lot of trilogies, that's what it is, right? We're just getting from movie 1 to movie 3, and this, so much of it is substantial, and I think maybe that's what makes this feel a little less interesting in comparison, is because it's not really, but yeah, I definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah, and it's like 20 minutes in a 3.5-hour movie,
sure.
So
yeah,
it's not a substantial part of the movie, but like you said, foregone conclusion stuff. Like, we have to see yet another person, like, discover the ring and get tempted by the ring and then make a bad decision about the ring. It's also just things we've seen a couple of times as well. There's things inside them that I really like. Like, I like the Gollum in the pool, like, bashing the fish against the thing and singing the little song. Obviously,
that's one of my favorite Gollum moments.
Yeah. Frodo betraying him, which is important, right? Because to later on in the story.
Yes.
Right.
I forgot that happens here. Yeah.
So all that stuff I think is necessary to do. It's just one of the things where I'm like, I wish we could have like condensed it just a little bit. And it's really more the Aragorn side of things than it is the Frodo side of things that just makes it feel a little bit spongy. So, but once we're through that stuff, I think that, we're pretty quickly into like astoundingly good stuff, right? Which is, you see the Helm's Deep thing, like the sort of like miniature set in that mountain from far away, looks astounding. When you go to behind the scenes stuff, it's insane. They built like this little miniature, they built a full-size set, for like sections of it, and then they built this bigature that you could basically walk. It was like quarter scale. That's an insane scale for a fortress to build for a movie.
Yeah, quarter scale doesn't sound, 1 to 4 does not sound that impressive, but think about what we're actually talking about here for sure.
Like, you can see pictures of Jackson, like, he's like, the door which is like, huge in the movie, is like up to his head, but he can walk in to the set. That's crazy. It looks like a little house that he's walking into. Which is an insane thing to do. We also get here, we do get the Arwen stuff, we get the Elrond stuff, we get the, the Galadriel stuff. And once again, it feels like Jackson trying to solve a problem in the books, which is that you've got your love interests hundreds of miles apart for the entire trilogy, except for the one time where they're in the same place. And you have to keep reminding people that this is an important thing, right?
Well, it's nice that we flash back to Rivendell a little bit too. Like, we kind of deepens the Aragorn character. The way we get to that, him kind of washing up on the beach and having these memories. But like, again, that's all stuff that could have been in Fellowship, and we had to just kind of fill that in for ourselves. It's nice to see that. I think they're really good together. Also.
Oh, they're great together. And it's really, not about really any... Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off.
Just the chemistry that Viggo Mortensen and Liv Tyler have is it feels pretty real.
It does. And none of the individual pieces, right, are substandard at all. It's just, I think you have this 20 minutes where you can feel them trying to figure out how to do certain things. It's certain things. They're like, it's like, we got to figure out we want to bring the elves to Helm's Deep, which is not a thing that happens in the books. Another thing that fans initially were like, what the hell are you doing? Like, this is not something that should happen. And now it's pretty accepted and I like it, but it's just one of these things where they have to figure out a way to do that. So you have to get to Elrond, you have to get to Galadriel, you have to do a kind of basically a exposition scene, right? In the middle of this 3.5 hour long movie. And it just can't help but feel a little bit, like I said, squishy. It's just like, you just can't help it. Because you're really just saying, okay, stop. Now we're going to go to these other places in like weird ethereal flashbacky stuff. And it's like a mix of flashback, but also, and then stuff that's happening in real time. And it just, it gets a little bit messy in those moments.
And because we are setting up for this, what we know is going to be an epic battle scene, no matter what you know about this, like that's just the kind of movie this is, right? We're leading up to that Rio Bravo siege sequence. And, this is late. I mean, this is 2 hours in, 2.5 hours.
Probably
in.
More 2.5 probably at this point.
Probably close to 2.5 hours in. So, it's a tough time to have to do this.
Yeah. Absolutely, it is. It is a tough time to have to do it for sure. But I will say the one thing we do get from Aragorn being fake dead is that just awesome shot of him opening the doors, like the doors of Helm's Deep with that like the haze behind him and everything.
Well, I also like this shot of him like on the horse, kind of unconscious. That's great. Like great. Flopping around, seeing
all like the Uruk-hai troops coming looks great.
Oh, it's before that. Like when he first gets on the horse, he's like basically dead.
Yes, he is basically dead. And one thing all these movies do, they do a really good job of actually showing the toll of things that happen to the characters. Again, we'll talk about it more in Return of the King because there's a specific Gandalf thing that I just love in Return of the King. But it's here too with the Aragorn thing like you're talking about. One thing we skipped over, I want to say, again, the movie just taking time to slow down and give you little moments. The Eowyn like bad soup stew thing.
The stew, which he like kind of pours out, and then she turns. It's a romantic comedy moment. Sure.
Yeah, but it's a cute little moment, right? Where it's like, let's just give time to give like these characters a little time to like. It's not all just riding on horses and fighting, right? There's going to be time where they're sitting in camp and just trying to like pass the time, and like this is one of those times.
I like the Gimli stuff, the elf, the dwarf women thing, and what Aragorn says about the beards. Just these little funny moments. Sure, there's a lot of those in the first movie too. I think less here, but it works really nicely to, just give us these are crowd pleaser type movies, and as dark as it is, and as deep and as thoughtful as they are, just little fun moments. I agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
And every scene has one.
Yes, every scene has one. And
unless it's as serious, there are some where there's just no place for it. But like Gollum smacking the fish around, stuff like that, I think works really nicely. Yeah. Also.
Jackson just never leaves that stuff behind for too long. He's always coming back to it. He's always pulling back.
He's a silly guy, Jackson.
He is a silly guy.
He kind of cuts his teeth on, gross out comedies. And you get a little bit of that here too.
Yeah, 100%. And then we're sort of into the prep for the battle. Right. And again, Bernard Hill is just such a key to this whole thing working. His sort of despondency at how many people are, how big the force is that's coming, that sort of confrontation on like the battlements where, Aragorn is like, you've got to call, you got to call for aid, and him just being like, you can just tell that he spent all of these years being let down by all of these people around him. And he just is like, this is it. We're alone, and that's it. His like getting ready scene, that whole like, where is the horse and the rider? Where is the horn that was blowing? They've passed like rain on the mountainside or whatever it is. And just, you're talking about the transience of life, and especially in war, and how things just go away. And, one moment they're here and one moment they're gone. And you're seeing this as like the kids are being pulled out of the caves to be fighters and all this stuff. Again, showing you the human toll of what's happening, right?
As a great moment where a kid that has to be like 9-10 years old is fitted with a battle helmet. And it's obviously very loose on his head. And then we move on to like an old man.
Yeah.
Like those are things that are happening in the world. Like right now, we're
absolutely
seeing stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And this, this sort of confrontation scene between Legolas and Aragorn, I think, is also important. Like, you're given this idea that, like, even Legolas is, like, despairing about the situation that he's in, right? This is not, we've never seen that kind of crack in him at all before.
And it's resolved pretty quickly. Like, in the next scene, that he apologizes and like, all right, let's go into battle together. But yeah, these little moments of doubt, And I think that helps us, like, even though we kind of know that these major characters are probably going to make it through this, it does give this whole thing an emotional weight that it wouldn't have otherwise. If we didn't, like, again, I mentioned Legolas before, like, he's kind of a handsome guy that shoots arrows, but I always, emotionally kind of connected with every member of the Fellowship. Merry and Pippin, right? The stoner guys, the comic relief characters. I really kind of feel for them too. And when they talk about just giving up and going home, that actually hits pretty hard too, because
it does,
he's done the character work on all of them up to this point. It's not like, even though they don't all get as much screen time, there's only so much screen time to have, even in a 4-hour movie.
Yeah.
And yet we've got these little things that kind of connect us to all these characters. And I really like this moment with Legolas that you're talking about.
Yeah. When you have 8 main characters, there's only so much time, to do what you got to do. But yeah. Because
just Elrond and his daughter, that little subplot there, Aragorn can be a memory for you, but you can't actually be together. Like that stuff is all really great.
And this idea, like the Elrond stuff, which I think is really, they're really, Jackson and Boyens and Walsh are so good at distilling down.
Stephen Sinclair comes back as a writer on this one.
Are really good at distilling down what the heart of it is, right? Which is that Elrond just does not want his daughter to die. He's like, right. I don't want to leave you here because you're going to die if you stay here. And
that sequence, the idea when we see her with old dead Aragorn and then this life that she leads after. I mean, that is such a, I'm sure I've known older couples where one half of the couple dies and the other person lives on. And that's like the saddest thing, that's like a Michael Haneke movie thing. Didn't he make a movie about that? And like, that's just sort of here in the middle of this like cool ass medieval battle movie. And like that scene kind of broke me. And I was like, I didn't remember that either.
Yeah, the movies have a deeply romantic undertone to them, which again is something that makes them special, right? And it connects them to old.
But I mean, it really in this PG-13 crowd pleaser movie, that like the thought that it's expressing about death, which is unfortunately a thing that's going to come to us all at some point, to express something that deep and dark and profound here before you get this cool ass battle scene. That's a tough thing to pull off, I think, and it doesn't feel out of place. It just kind of it draws us further in rather than pulling us out of all the other stuff.
Yeah, and this idea, right, that you could make a whole movie about an elven,
an immortal
person, an immortal choosing to die, right?
Right, yeah.
And it's just like it's 10 minutes of this movie,
it's
and
then
thread, we're gone.
Huge overarching story,
yeah. We're back to this big battle that's about to happen. And I think the elves showing up at Helm's Deep, I think it makes thematic sense in 2 ways. One is that it's a sacrifice, right? It's these characters, similarly what Arwen is doing, choosing to stay behind and possibly die to help protect the future of this land rather than kind of preserve their own lives, right? Big message about everything going on right now as well, obviously applicable to now. Also, this idea that you just can't do it alone, right? Frodo can't do it alone. This army can't do it alone. They need help. And we have to be able to reach our hands out and accept the help when it comes, and I think that's why thematically it does work, and why I think it's one of those changes that people have come to accept who are big book fans, because we feel like it gets the spirit of it right, even if it's not exactly what happens in the actual story in the books.
Are we now past the point where Treebeard sees the destruction of the forest?
No, not yet. I think we're around
revenge?
there. Okay. Yeah, we're around there right now.
Because I will say, I mean, that happens a little quickly because we just can't spend a lot of time on it. I do think it's a turn that takes that could be dwelled on a little bit longer. It's like he just calls out to the trees and it's like, all right, we're going to go destroy Isengard. And then they just do it.
Yeah.
Feels a little bit shorthanded, but also it's one of the most awesome scenes in the entire trilogy. So.
Yeah, I mean, we have had a lot. I'll say this: you get a lot of time with the Ents, so you already have them debating and deciding not to do the fight. So to have them debate again, I think would feel sort of squishy, right?
It feels a little weird that it's like they take him to the edge of the forest. He sees it destroyed and burned down. It's like, right, we're gone. But
it's not just the fact that it's a forest burned down. It's the fact that it's Fangorn Forest burned down, which is a big thing.
These were my friends, he says.
Yeah, which is a thing that comes up and I don't think it's in the theatrical version, but in one of the Saruman scenes that we get in this movie, where he says we're out of fuel, and he goes, well, Fangorn Forest is right there.
Burn it down. Yeah, it's in the first 10 minutes or so of this.
Yeah. Which I think is supposed to impart to you that they've taken all the other trees down. And they don't want to go do that, right? Because some of them, the idea that you don't touch that forest, right? But I will say, you mentioned the Merry and Pippin scene where, basically they're getting sent home, and Pippin is like, we still have the Shire, and I think Merry being like, there won't be a Shire anymore, is finally what kind of breaks Pippin's kid-like mentality about everything that's been happening here, right? He's always kind of thought, well, we always have something to go back to. If we need to leave, we don't have the ring, we don't have the thing. There's still this wonderful, beautiful place that we can just go to, But
again, and I think that's connected to the Faramir monologue, right? Why do you fight? What drives you to go to war? Not because you want to, not because you're just out for blood, but because if you don't stand up for what is meaningful to you, then who knows if you'll have that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the end scene, music. The music is so good in this scene where they're marching on the Isengard. It is such good music.
So much.
Yeah. And I just love, there's also this idea, right, that these beings are so powerful. They are so on a different level than anything that's happening right now, and the fact that they're able to do this so fast, I think, is great. And
well, they're big and they're old and they're wise. And I don't know how much we'll be able to talk about actually the scene, but the thing that I forgot is one of them gets set on fire. They're the orcs are firing flaming arrows at it, and it's set on fire. Then they break the dam and release the river, and they all just stand this wonderful moment where they all just kind of root themselves back in the ground, and it's in the background of the shot, the water washes over this one that's on fire and puts out the fire.
Yeah, well, he runs up and puts his little head, he puts his tree head in the fire into the water. I mean, it's so good, and of course, the Isengard miniature is crazy. It's a whole parking lot sized thing, and all these digital characters are basically being placed into this real thing, and it's just another crazy technical feat. And there's all, again, the battle has a bunch of little things, right? The guy got lit on fire, the guy gets pulled down, and they're the orcs are trying to chop him with little axes. Treebird throws the rock, all that stuff is really good.
Then Merry and Pippin start throwing rocks too, little rocks. Yeah.
And I love that Treebeard is good shot. He's cheering him on.
Well, they do. They hit an orc right in the head. It's great.
Yeah.
They also, every one of them, and we never get to meet any of them, but they all kind of look different. They have, there's a moment earlier on, he says something about oak and ash, all the different species of trees all come together. It's great.
Yeah.
What a hippie ass thing to do, and works so perfectly in this movie.
crazy hippie ass
This
thing
world.
to do, which is great.
Bit of a tree hugger myself.
Yeah.
It was literally when they pick up, there's like a bridge or a guard tower or something, and they pick it up and they throw it down into that massive sort of cave system that we saw, you know, the forge from the earlier movie. It's so good.
Yeah, it is great. Great scene. And again,
Just
it's
a
being
rousing moment in the middle of another totally rousing, you know, kick-ass moment happening, you know, elsewhere in the world.
It's being intercut with the Helm's Deep fight, right?
Yeah.
Which we haven't even kicked off yet, but it's
which we do have to talk to about.
Again, little moments, right? So we get everyone lined up. We have immediately we're getting battle geography, right? We've got the wall, we've got the keep, we've got the soldiers behind the wall,
the causeway leading up to the gate.
Yeah. And we got the soldiers, we got the orcs coming up through this like ravine, basically, right? Towards this fortress. You know, we get that great, it starts raining, of course, up the drama. We get the guy accidentally shoots the arrow and kills the one orc.
That is a nice little moment, isn't it?
It is a great little moment. And then, like, you know, all hell breaks loose, you know, and we get the "so it begins" line from Theoden. And I just love, right, we get the like this smooth, wonderful, like, you know, the elves shooting all their arrows, and then, you know, the Rohirrim shoot their arrows, and it's like the guy with missing an eye, and he's like, yeah, or whatever. It's just like these little moments that Jackson knows how to do, right? It's like, you don't forget there's a guy without an eye who tells him to shoot the arrows. You know, like that's a little thing that you do. You put a little detail in there, right? He's not just a normal look at extra guy. You know, it's
and I mean, this sequence inspired so many things that followed, right? Like every battle movie after this is like, we're trying to do something that's like Helm's Deep, but like, you know, particularly as the technology improves and you can just do like thousands of CGI soldiers on a battlefield, you kind of just lose the sense of like I don't know, the weight of it. And I keep using that word for like the special effects and the way this is choreographed and things like that. But
and I will say there are a lot of CG, like they created a whole system to expand that army out to be hundreds, you know, 10,000
sure,
people.
And I'm not even really talking about the special effects. I'm just talking about like when you do a battle sequence like this, it's always just like big, you know, you just try to, and I think that's a problem that we'll talk about with the Hobbit movies is that they just don't have these kind of little moments that you're talking about and these things that like really kind of draw us, like put us right into the middle of that. I will say some of the like season finale, talking about Game of Thrones again, when they were doing stuff inspired by this, I thought they did a pretty good job of like,
they did a great job,
character work and just sort of like nicely choreographed, nicely directed little bits that like, you know, not only put you in the middle of it, but also just give it flavor and personality and kind of reveal character in the midst of these like epic sort of battle sequences. And there's so much of that here and just so many little things. One of my favorite images is when the orcs turn their shields up and they're like slowly making their way up the causeway there and they can't, you know, the arrows can't penetrate it. It's like those kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
Like it's such a big, epic, crazy, chaotic battle sequence, but like we can talk, I don't want to because we'll be here all night, but you know, every stage of it, right? When they first start raising the ladders and, you know, that first guy comes over and they kill him, but then a bunch more, you know, there's like so many things that you can tell Peter Jackson spent a lot of time thinking about how can I make this just as fun and interesting and dynamic as possible and, you know, have so many memorable moments in what just could be a mess of like, you know, so many battle sequences in so many movies is like, it's hard to tell who's slashing their sword at who, you know?
And where they are in relation to the other people that are going on, you know?
The geography, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, you get, like, I think there's a great job of setting up little things, right? You've got sort of like Theoden's perch, right? Where he's looking down and kind of for overseeing the whole battle. And so you're going to go back there whenever some big moment happens because the way he reacts is going to tell you how you should be feeling in that moment, right? You've got the Gimli and Legolas thing, the counting thing. You've got the beginning of the battle where, you know, would you like me to explain it to you or would you like me to fetch you a box, you know, and like him laughing and like this moment of them having like this bonding, right? You have their little set piece thing, right? You got Aragorn sort of like leading this elven force that's there, right? You got all these little things, you know, peppered across the battle, which work so well, you know. like even the fact that they have the arrows fire from behind the wall, right, and that second volley.
Oh, I like that. Yeah,
so
the
cool.
lob shot. Yep.
Yeah, which is so cool. And yeah, you have the ladders coming up. You know, you understand all of this stuff that's going on. And you've got nice little dramatic irony bits. You know, the whole like, is this it? Is this all you can conjure, Saruman? And then right away you have the wall blow up, and the wall blowing up is still one of those moments that you're just like, your breath catches in your chest in that moment, you know? No, I've seen this movie 20 times, you know? Every time it happens, it's just such this like thing. And, you know, they blew up their like crazy big, huge fake miniature set. They had one chance to do it, you know, and you get those real rocks like blowing out, and it just feels so powerful in that moment, you know? And then you get your own little like things there, right? You get Legolas surfing down the stairs, right? Which is great. Which is a great moment. You know, you get, you know, Gimli sort of coming out of the water. You get Aragorn sort of like, you know, getting
tossing
up,
a dwarf. Yeah.
Tossing a dwarf. You get all these little things, you know. You've got the elven like general dies in that one moment, and Jackson takes the time for him to like look at all of his like comrades who have also fallen. You know, like how much they've sacrificed to be here and help, you know, just to sort of stem the tide. And you see
Aragorn just kind of like put his hand on him, and like we barely care about or know this character. And again, it's, you said that this doesn't happen in the books, but like when he arrives, you know, in the scene just prior to this one, and Aragorn, you know, it's like, I'm so happy that you're here. Like it's so genuine, and like that friendship that like, it's just, you know, the movie's telling you like these guys really like each other, and you know, it's like there, and you internalize it right away, and then you really feel sad when this guy dies a couple of scenes later, and you feel Aragorn's, you know, pain at the, you know, seeing the loss of this friend of his that we know nothing about, and we know nothing about their relationship, and the movie hasn't been able to set that up other than, you know, they have this one moment together, and it works so well that we buy it.
Yeah, you care about Aragorn, so you care about what Aragorn cares about. You know, that's really,
and you know that anyone that he considers, you know, a friend and a compatriot and a comrade, well, like, then he must be a really good guy too.
Exactly. You know, and then you get the, you know, what any great battle scene has is things get progressively worse for our heroes,
this
right?
Inward movement, right? Like, you know, it's a siege sequence. Like you start, they can't breach the wall, then they breach the wall. Well, they can't knock down the door, then they knock down the door. It's like, like you just keep stepping it up, and they keep moving backward. And, you know, Peter Jackson is so good. We were talking about this with even Dead Alive back in the early part of his career. These scenes where there's just, you know, it's just such a clear sense of where everything is, how everything works, what the stakes are at every given moment of this particular thing. And, you know, it's so easy to lose that. Even a good director sometimes, you know, there's like even some of those, like, you know, the Howard Hawks, John Ford sort of Westerns don't do that great of a job of this. And this movie is just like, it's almost effortless for Peter Jackson.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or he makes it feel that way.
He makes it feel that way. I'm sure it wasn't effortless. I'm sure it was a ton of effort. But, you know...
Well, he's a little kid playing with toy soldiers on a really cool play set.
The, you know, you have time where you have your... Like, we talk about the throwing Gimli scene. Where you just get two of your characters, take them off to the side, and have them do a little thing together, right? That really helps in these situations. You know, it's just how you diagram scenes like this to keep you engaged in what's happening and not just get lost in the like of swords and some of the CG and, you know, whatever. You don't get lost in it because you're constantly being driven back into the characters and the reality of what's happening.
And just, you know, having like a fun, cute moment like that while everyone around them is getting slaughtered. You know, it's such a dark scene. And then like, here's this like little comic booky thing that, you know, and the better Marvel movies are good at doing stuff like that also. But
absolutely.
Like here, it's just so nicely integrated into everything else. And just this little moment of levity in the middle of a very dark visually and thematically sort of scene where it's going very poorly at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you mentioned the good Marvel stuff. It's like an Endgame when, like, you know, Spider-Man's like, you know, holding on to the gauntlet, and like Captain Marvel comes down and he's like, hey, I'm Peter Parker. It's like that sort of moment where you're like, yeah, he would say that in that moment, like he would be a polite little boy, a polite, nice boy from Queens and say his name, to the new person.
You don't lose who you are just because all this horrible stuff is happening all around you. Exactly.
And that's what I like about these scenes. Again, there's nothing we could say about this battle scene that will do it justice. It's like there's never been as good a one of these as this one is, to this day, basically. So it's just the perfect example of how you do a big scale fight like this. And again, with laid out stakes, the whole point is like, just hold them off until this next morning, right? That's all you have to do is just hold them off. And, we get this great sort of scene where, the Aragorn is like, we talked about the reckless hate line. And then right after that, Aragorn's like, let's just ride out. Like, let's just get on our horses and go out, which is what he's saying is what you should have done from the first place, is do the thing you're best at, get on the horse and meet these people where they live. Do not go hiding, away. Like, remember who you are, basically, is what he's telling him, And it's part also of Aragorn's journey of like taking up this mantle, right? Of being this like the leader of men, you get a little bit with Boromir at the end of Fellowship, and here you get it again, right, where he's really kind of staking his claim and taking his place among these, these people. And I just love how they just fucking like rush out of that door and just like plow
just
through
slashing everything in their way.
Yeah. And I love, again, another great, Bernard Hill has another speech to give there. He goes the Red Dawn, and then Gimli blows that giant fucking horn that's built into the fortress, and
right. And it's nicely, these movies work so well because we have the knowledge of movies that came before them, right? That's a suicide, that's Pickett's charge, right? They're just going to ride out and fight a lot and then die. And there's going to be a very dramatic scene, but they actually don't, because this movie, as we said before, it's not going for those sort of easy setup, payoff, dramatic sort of moments. So, they actually do succeed.
And then we get, another just unbelievably iconic shot, right? We get Gandalf showing up at the top of the hill. Éomer is there, and then they charge down that hill.
The riders charging down the hill is so great. Like an ocean sort of sweeping down. Amazing.
And, and the music is sort of like playing it a little bit chill, a little more like at that point, and then when the sun rises over the ridge and blinds them, it's just such a great choreography for this, and it looks amazing, and we then get to spend that time we get to give kind of full time to Sam and Frodo. Basically they're at Osgiliath, which is like right near where Minas Tirith is. They're basically almost at Minas Tirith. They're basically being told, Faramir says, take them to my father, essentially. And the city and the Ringwraith show up, right? And we get a great Peter Jackson, wide angle lens straight up in, Elijah Wood's face, him being all creepy and weird, they're here, they've come. I love that he goes up there, like that thing is about to grab him or whatever, and Sam saves him, of course.
Oh, that amazing shot where he just like faces it, it's looking right at us, and we see him kind of close up, face to face. That's amazing. Really. Again, in a movie that does not lack for like beautiful images and iconic moments, that slow-mo of that thing just flapping its wings and Frodo in the foreground, like we're gonna deliver right until the very end of this one.
Yeah.
Love that shot. I forgot all about that shot. Again, there's so much great in this trilogy, in these movies. Like, I've seen this multiple times. Like, that's an incredible shot. I forgot all about it.
It absolutely is. And we get Sam's speech, right? And this thing kills me every single time.
Yep.
It killed me this time, especially. It feels like it was written yesterday. Like when he says that line, when he goes like, and you didn't want to know the end, how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? I'm like sobbing,
Yeah, that feels real, this wonderful moment of hope in a despairing sort of time.
Yeah.
Ooh, boy.
But it's one of those ways that I just want to say, not to be overly corny, but it's like the power of storytelling, the power of movies, books, whatever it might be. In this case, we're talking about a movie, but like when you're feeling a certain way, find some sliver of hope because of this thing, right? And
right.
that like, because we're holding on to something, that there's some good in this world and it's worth fighting
well, like
for.
If Tolkien could conceive of this kind of goodness and Jackson could articulate it on screen, then maybe it actually exists in the world, you know? Like, that is what fantasy is all about, right? Like, these are fairy tales are to teach you values, you know, to sort of show you a way of living and what it means to be good. And yeah, it's such I don't know. I mean, it's another theme that sort of runs through this, right? The idea of, stories about them and how they are going to live on. And again, that's another thing that's setting up, of course they're going to die here, and then they'll write ballads about them, going on to the future, and they will live on that way.
Yeah.
So it's more of a surprise, as we said before, what actually happens in the third movie.
Yeah, and I think it's also like a great like kind of meta speech about like talking to the audience about, you're probably feeling the same way. Like, how is this going to end up? Right. Well, another reminder that Sam is like the character, in this story in many ways. He is like the thing that you're fighting for, that the kind of person you're fighting for is this person, who.
And when Frodo actually says it to him, and it is corny, right? Like, how Sam is a hero too. Whatever. Aw, shucks, but that works out. And again, that's performance. Neither one of those guys, I'd seen them in things before, obviously, and Sean Astin is great, and Rudy and things like that. But like, this moment between the two of them, it's beautiful, brilliant acting that just like so goes far beyond, what we usually see in what is essentially just a genre film, Yeah.
And that look that Gollum gives him when he's giving that speech, is also really powerful.
Yep.
And again, like you said, Faramir, I coming and saying, I think we finally understand each other.
Yeah.
Like, this is also exactly the way that I feel, and then making him realize, what it is. And Sam, once again, earlier in the earlier scene where he says, like, he tells Faramir, he goes, kind of his last ditch, like, I didn't want to tell him this because I didn't want to hurt him, but like, what happened to your brother? Like, basically, like, he died because he wasn't strong enough, to deal with this thing. And I think that also really gets to him, right? Because he pictures Boromir as like this ideal of what a man can be. His brother is like that ideal. And so I think it also breaks him down.
Yeah, it works even without the daddy issues flashback that we get in
exactly,
the extended edition. Sure.
Yeah. His dad is a real son of a bitch. But we'll get into that much more in the next one. I didn't really talk about it this time because his main son of a bitchness is in Return of the King. But and the movie's basically over. There's a couple of scenes like there's a couple of scenes here that were in the theatrical, which I think are good, but I don't think are totally necessary. There's one extra scene of Faramir like choke slamming Gollum. I don't think we need 3 scenes of Faramir choke slamming Gollum, but the information is important. But I really think the way that they conveyed at the end with Gollum like talking to himself, and setting up what's going to come in the next movie, I think is really good. That we'll take. We'll let her do it kind of thing. I'm very curious at this point, like you watching this movie for the first time, if do you have any idea what was coming? Like what he was talking about? Okay.
Not at all. And and Shelob was an incredible surprise for me.
Yeah. One of those things when you read the books, you're most like, I cannot wait.
Can't wait to see
see what this is going to look like, And we'll talk about that next time. But
no, I think I remember, like, I think they established it in Fellowship, right? The idea that there are evils beyond even what you see and goods beyond even what you see there. So I was like, oh, cool. We're going to get a new villain and it's going to be awesome because, basically Saruman gets, he lives through that. I forgot that, right?
Yeah. He dies in the next one.
Yeah, no, I know. But like the Siege of Isengard, like, why didn't they just rip the tower down? He's human in some sense. They could have just like knocked it over and he would have fallen, like,
you see them trying to break the tower.
Stories.
They can't break the tower. That's the one thing they can't do. They can't break the tower.
Yeah, but
they
he's
try.
Just kind of there. You don't see him flee or anything like that.
Yeah.
But so I figured, okay, well, if he's still around, but he's basically been weakened, then we need somebody to kind of take his place.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I'm very excited to talk about Return of the King next time. But yeah, Two Towers.
I love the way this ends too. That after we, Gollum kind of makes his plan and decides what he's going to do. And then the camera just rises up and we see Mount Doom. We see the explosion, the volcanic explosion, and then cut to black.
It's once again like, and guess what? They still got to do all this shit. Like, that's how it feels,
One of the things that these films do really well is just the idea of distance, and the fact that they have to go so far. And this is such a long, it's not just a treacherous journey, it's a very long journey. I finally looked up, I've always wanted to know this, how much time actually takes place from when they leave the Shire to when they get to Mount Doom and, the climactic stuff happens in the third movie. And I think it was something like 13 months, 14 months.
I was wondering what it was. I think it's slightly different in the books. I was wondering what it was in the movies. But this was just
like a quick Google search, year and a half. It's
a long time to be walking.
Sure. Well, there's a long way to walk. And I
a long
really,
way to walk,
it has to be that, right? Like this can't take place over the course of a couple of weeks. So
no.
I like that.
You can't at all. So yeah, that's Two Towers. I mean, it opened huge, obviously. $26 million opening day.
Opens bigger than the, which, at first I was like, oh, really? But who's going to see Fellowship of the Ring and not want to see this? And then that comes out on DVD and people, the word of mouth and stuff. Sure.
One of the rare instances where all the movies grew. Each
nobody's
movie made
checking
more than
out
the
of this
last
franchise.
No.
Nobody's like, oh, I saw the first one. I got it. I'm done.
No, they all grew in box office and did great. It's so funny about movies growing at box office, and we'll talk about this again next time because I'm telling you this for the first time, and I'm saying it on mic, and we'll see if it really happens. Brian's supposed to join us for Return of the King. Brian Verderosa. I remember we went to see the final Harry Potter film at midnight, and we were talking before the movie started, and I was like, they think this one is going to, make X amount more than the last one. And Brian goes, I don't understand. Why would this one make more than the last one at midnight? Why would it make more? You have to say that was this one. I was like, well, Brian, did you see the last one at midnight? And he was like, oh, no, I guess I didn't. I was like, yeah, this is what happens. It builds, but So this was a huge, obviously a massive hit. It makes more worldwide than, Fellowship of the Ring made. This one broached into like the 900 million something, right? Worldwide. Fellowship was in the high 800s, I believe.
Makes more money. It's slightly not as positively reviewed as Fellowship.
No,
it doesn't get the awards. I mean, it's nominated for a lot of awards. It wins a few, like technical awards, things like that. But this is the one of the three, right? Return of the King is the one that kind of sweeps everything. Yes. Fellowship gets a lot of, for a genre film, does very well. In that world, that aspect of, award season kind of notices. This one is the kind of forgotten one. Yeah, but I don't know. Seeing it this time, it just strikes me how much that it's kind of the middle child of the franchise,
of
and
course.
Yet it's got a flavor of its own, and there's so much good stuff in it.
I think
there's
it's
something
so funny
to be said for the middle child.
Because this one comes out, right, and it still gets 6 Oscar nominations, right? It wins 2, but it doesn't get a Best Director nomination, right? It gets a Best Picture nomination, though. But even by then, the kind of prevailing sentiment was, yes, they're just waiting now for the third one to come out, and then that's the one that will get all the awards. That's all they're waiting for, right? The first one got a bunch of awards. I mean, it was a big surprise that it was so critically lauded, I think, the first one. This one, they were like, okay, obviously it deserves to get nominated for Best Picture, but Pete's not getting a nomination this time. We'll give it to somebody else, and next time they'll get everything. And I remember the Oscar ceremony for Return of the King, people were like, it was kind of boring. I was like, it was the best night ever, because I just got to see Peter Jackson come up on stage 11 times or whatever it was. But yeah, it's the middle child, but I think still, if this is your middle child, what a middle child to have. Yeah, a truly great movie with some really remarkable and groundbreaking things in it. Next time we'll talk about the end of this trilogy, which is The Return of the King. I think a movie that I cry no less than 5 times during, so we'll definitely discuss that. And yeah, hopefully Brian Verderosa will be our guest for that episode. And then we're out of Middle Earth for 2 movies before we return once again. And I think it'll be fascinating to talk about the differences between these movies.
Well, we're going to smaller movies, but by smaller movies, we mean another multi-$100 million budgeted blockbuster in King Kong. Yeah.
There's only just one of them. That's the only reason it's smaller, because there's only one of them. And then a slightly smaller movie, and then back into the mega budget again. But that's going to do it for the show for this week. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Check out our Substack, intrepidfilmographers.com. And once again, please review, the rate, review, the most important part, really, really helps, less listened to podcasts grow and get an audience. So I really appreciate it if you could leave a review. But until next time, thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you to everybody who's been listening. Be good to one another. Later.